Okay, we are past time and we have a quorum, so we can get started now. Madam City Clerk, can you do the roll call, please?
Councilmember Sinks. Here. Councilmember Willie. Here. Vice Mayor Chow.
Here.
Mayor Scharf.
Here. And Councilmember Paul is, here's Darcy. Okay, so we're all here. So we have one item in the study session. It's regarding the Vallco Shopping District Special Area Initial General Plan Amendment. I apologize if I'm a little bit out of it. I just came from an overseas flight. I've been up for 30 hours.
So, out of abundance of caution, I will recuse myself from this item. Even though it's a general plan amendment item, it's not a project proposal, but just to be cautious.
Okay, thank you. So, do we have a report?
Absolutely. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, we're here tonight to have a study session regarding the Vallco Shopping District Special Area Initial General Plan Amendments. The general plan provides that if a specific plan is not adopted for the Vallco specific plan area by a date certain, that was back in 2018, the City Council will consider removing the residential and office designations from the Vallco site and look at alternative options. And that's what we are doing here this evening. This would be for an initial plan. You earlier directed staff to investigate and come up with a process for a community planning process at the site, and that is still underway. But this is to ensure that there are land use designations at the site that meet community objectives in the short run.
Right, so we can come back and add housing back at that site, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. The changes that you would be discussing tonight also would not apply to the SB 35 project.
Right.
That project has a vested right. So that project, as far as the city's land use plans and everything, the city staff is processing it in accordance with the law, and everything is moving forward. So the staff report presents three options. Option one would be removing the office and the housing at the site and proceeding with scenario B, which involves upzoning several areas around the city as contemplated in the general plan. The general plan recognized that it might not be feasible to get a specific plan in time, and so set that up as an alternative. But you are not required to proceed with scenario B, just have to consider it. Option two would remove the office but retain the housing at the Vallco site and remove the requirement that there be a specific plan before the housing be developed. And the way option B is presented, it would keep the 389 housing units that were contemplated in the general plan and the housing element when it was adopted. Then option C would be to do nothing and just leave things as they are. There are obviously many details, but I know we have a short time tonight, so I will stop talking and answer questions.
Great. So even without those 389, I think we do meet the our RENA number, barely, right?
Well, you've got things designated, but the 389 is part of a priority housing site, and under state law, we have to keep the land, the number of units we have designated in priority housing sites available.
Okay.
So we can't simply get rid of the 389 and not do anything else.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Madam City, Rod, do you have?
No, I have no question.
Okay. We have any speaker cards? Great. So I've got about 6 here. You each get 3 minutes. First is Edward Hirschfield, followed by Michael Lenahan, followed by Fariba Nijat. Welcome.
May I begin?
Yes, begin.
My name is Ed Hirschfield. I'm a 57-year homeowner in Cupertino. I don't understand what you just said, sir. You said the SB 35 project is vested, yet you're seeking to change the zoning related to that property. Is that what I heard you say?
Sure, you can respond.
We are changing the general plan and the zoning for the council is discussing whether they want to proceed with that. Regardless of that change, the SB 35 project would be allowed to proceed.
Okay. So the project is allowed to proceed as presently defined, and there is nothing in this that would inhibit that to take place.
That's correct.
Okay. I had been concerned because it seemed to me that if there was a vested plan and there was an attempt by the city to change it ex post facto, that the city would be liable for all costs incurred. And as I've determined, those costs are about $400 million at this point. And so I would hate to see a $400 million judgment against all the residents of the city. So I'm very concerned about that and very opposed to the zoning change if it has any impact on that project proceeding. That's my point. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, next is Michael Lenahan, followed by Fariba.
So, hi. My understanding is this is kind of Plan B type zoning for Vallco. If the lawsuit rules against SB 35, then these changes would take effect. Is that correct? Then this would become the plan of record. Am I understanding correctly? Because it doesn't make sense to change zoning laws on something where you're already building, there's already a plan that won't even follow
Right,
this.
I mean,
okay.
if that plan doesn't go forward for whatever reason.
Right. So I guess my point is I don't agree with eliminating the housing and the retail space here. I mean, we're in the middle of a housing crisis. Every single city has to step up and try to solve it. We can't just assume that some other suburb is going to do it. And so I think we should, either stick with the original specific plan that was approved, or approve one that has at least as much retail and office and homes as that plan. In my opinion, I know all these young professionals at Apple that can't afford to live in Cupertino. I mean, these are guys that work at R&D in Apple, and they still can't afford a house here. I mean, it's ridiculous. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Fariba, followed by Kevin McClelland, followed by Greg Schaefer. Welcome, Fariba.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and Honorable Council Member. My name is Fariba Nejat, and I live in Cupertino for over three decades. And I do support the previous Vallco plan with affordable housing and more housing, since this brings more diversity to the city. Also, I have a letter from another resident who was asking me to read it for you. He said, this letter is from Ervan Kranzler. She said, I am Cupertino homeowner, and it sickens me to see what those on our city council, most of whom didn't get my vote, are doing to sabotage Vallco. You have my support, and I'm out of town and cannot attend tonight, but please feel free to share my sentiments verbally. I'm just reading it, the letter that she was asking me to read it for you. But anyway, this is very important that we will stick to what we have, especially during this time, which is the home, is very affordable housing is really major thing for all of our hardworking people who are living in the area. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Kevin McClelland, followed by Greg Schaefer, followed by Sonia Traus. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council. As many of you know, I've been tracking and been a part of this process for a long time, as it's been going on for a long time. And I would just ask and encourage that you leave the allocations as they stand and allow the current process to continue to move forward. I think that's what the majority of the citizens of Cupertino would like. I think that's what the majority of the citizens of the county would actually really appreciate. And I think that for now, there really isn't an urgent need to make a change. So please, if you could, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Greg Schaefer, followed by Sonia Traus, followed by Sujatha Venkacharan. Welcome, Greg.
Hi, my name is Greg Schaefer. I have lived in Cupertino for 30 years. I have worked in 5 startup companies, and we're all in it for the same reason, to make money. Only those who had something that they could sell actually succeeded. Sandhill, of course, is in the same business. They don't make ICs, but their business is to make money and hopefully do something that people want. Then they will succeed. We had in 2016 Measure C and D. Measure D essentially said, and this was from registered voters of Cupertino, they did not want Sandhill's first Vallco plan. Measure D was defeated. My guess, if we were to take the vote again, it would probably be about the same. I am not opposed to a particular Vallco development per se. I am opposed to the one that's being done now because this is a simple reason. And Silicon Valley, my 5 companies that I worked at were in Sunnyvale and Milpitas, not Cupertino. Too expensive. Who wants a high-rise office building, 2 million square feet office building? Who wants that? That is becoming obsolete. I don't know if you know it, but jobs will start disappearing here, looking towards the future. The people who work in semiconductors here know this. My colleagues know it. It's something maybe the general people don't know it. So building something with lots of office space is building something that will become obsolete. Why do it? That's why I'm against it. You want housing? Build it all as housing. Fill it up with housing. That's it. I'm through. Goodbye.
Hey, thank you, Greg. Next, Sonia Traus, followed by Sujatha, followed by Lisa Warren. Welcome, Sonia.
Hi. Yeah, my name is Sonia Traus. I'm here from California Renters Legal Advocacy and Education Fund. We sent you a letter, and I'll hopefully summarize the interesting parts. My organization was started by me and a partner to promote enforcement of state housing laws, because a lot of cities violate state housing law. So in particular, one of the options before you is to go to scenario B, which if you take away the residential allocation from Vallco, you're currently, the plan, if you take that away, is to reallocate it to 2 sites. One of them is the Hamptons Apartments, and the other one is the Glenbrook Apartments. And as the names imply, those are apartments. People already live there. So before you, one of your options is that you would prevent a dead mall from becoming housing and promote tearing down existing apartments, displacing people that are there, and rebuilding new housing there. So this, I think, is immoral. You know, the dead mall, nobody lives there. It'd be good for it to become housing. It would be bad to tear down existing housing and cause displacement. And luckily, this is also illegal. In 2017, they passed something that they called AB 1397, and now it's called Section 65583.2. And that section says that cities can't identify sites as suitable for new housing if there's already housing there, unless the city has some really good reasons to believe that that housing is going to be vacated or torn down. You know, like something happened, like there's a fire and technically it's housing, but really no one lives there. So I just wanted to make sure that you knew that if you're really thinking about going through with scenario B, you could put yourself on the wrong side of state law. And also that it would be a very disruptive and pro-displacement move, which would be bad. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Next I have Sujatha, followed by Lisa Warren, followed by Neil Struthers. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. My name is Sujata Venkatraman, and I'm from West Valley Community Services. The city of Cupertino is far behind in its affordable housing inventory. So removing housing and removing affordable housing is not an option in the specific plan. If anybody opposing housing or even affordable housing, I will highly encourage, come visit West Valley Community Services. You will see the need, you will see the issues that Cupertino residents who are low income are facing on a day-to-day basis. We're right behind the fire station. And that will tell you the story, the real story of the people's struggle. We are seeing a 53% increase in need and demand, and most of the clients who are coming to us are talking about rent increase, housing, eviction. We feel like we are actually very concerned that the council is considering an action that so much of time and effort was put in developing a specific plan. We are recommending that you please stay with the specific plan with the affordable housing and not waste any more time and resources. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Lisa Warren, followed by Neil Struthers, followed by Jennifer Griffin.
Hello. I sent an email a couple hours ago. You may have gotten it, not had time to read. You may not have gotten it yet. So I've brought a copy of it for the record. And I'll read part of it. So what I did was forward an email that Reed Molds sent to friends stating that they just now learned of this meeting and this study session, which is a little interesting because last night there was a published article from the San Jose Mercury News talking about it, and both Reed Molds and Scott Wiener were quoted multiple times. So it's not a just now learning about it. The agenda's been out since last week as required. Anyway, I think it's important to note that neither the Mercury story or the letter from Reed Molds points out that over a year has passed since the City Council has had the ability to revisit the December 2014 City Council decisions regarding zoning at the Vallco Shopping District site. I'm not reading this whole thing to you, nor does either the story or the letter acknowledge that each of the 3 project plans that have been floated for the Vallco Shopping District since 2014, Measure D, SB 35, and any variation of the Vallco specific plan, Tier 2 specifically, completely exasperate or blow up the jobs to housing issue in and around our city. In fact, there's only a minuscule reference to the office at all. This is a recurring theme. The developer tends, and those who push for what is in front, has been in front of us, fail to, it seems, acknowledge, or they certainly don't bring it to the forefront. The majority of the space is for office. I haven't heard anyone here say they wanted office, even the people that are pro-housing. And of course, everyone knows we need housing, but we truly need it to be affordable, which is a moving target because it's not defined. By the way, I want to clarify that the Hampton site project has already been approved to tear down and increase the number of apartment units. That's a done deal. It's just not built because a developer's not building it. The letter from Reed brings back memories of letters that Peter Powell sent to the Sitting Planning Commission in 2014 prior to closing escrow on the Vallco properties, where he essentially demanded and threatened the Planning Commission and others. It also reminds me of a very sensible and balanced correspondence that was written by Paul Brophy 2 weeks after that letter from Peter Powell. I attached both of those letters. Some of you haven't read those because you, or may not have, because you weren't here in 2014. I encourage you to read both of those letters, specifically our new city manager, I hope, but I do want to
Okay, thank you, Lisa. Next is Neil Struthers, followed by Jennifer Griffin, followed by Jean Bedord. Welcome, Neil.
Good evening. I'm here speaking as a private citizen, a citizen who does not live in Cupertino. I live in East San Jose. I live in a community where 10 people to 20 people live in a house, no bigger than 1,800 square foot. I doubt that's happening in Cupertino. This is an issue that I've been involved in for over 4 years, as you know. I've seen this council change, and with the exception of Council Member Rod Sinks, this whole council is better Cupertino and their issue. And I can tell you that you can save yourself a lot of time tonight. It's going to be a 4-to-1 vote to tell staff to follow this direction to rezone Vallco, because this is part of Better Cupertino's plan. And they sold you a bill of goods during the election, Measure C, right? This is Measure C that didn't pass. They told you they were going to get you a better project. There is no better project. It's SB 35 or nothing. Because if we lose, we the people that need jobs, we the people that need housing, lose this project because of another lawsuit by Better Cupertino that now is trying to defend that, you know, this project's over. You're going to get an SB 35 project. You had the chance to get a much better project, and you told people you were going to do better than that, and you're not. So I can tell you right now, it's a 4-to-1 vote. Save yourself some time and energy and angst. You don't need to lobby this council. They have their mind made up.
Okay, Jennifer Griffin, followed by Jean Bedord.
Good evening, City Council. We're early tonight. This is going to be a 2 a.m.er, I can tell, but it's lots of good stuff. So the good stuff's beginning now. Hi, I live in Cupertino. I live in Rancho Rinconada, the beautiful eastern end of Cupertino. Lived there for many years. And what I think is really, really interesting about all these discussion of Vallco, you know, we had retail there. I shopped there all the time. I don't shop there anymore because we lost all our retail. I shop in Capitola. I was shopping at El Paseo until that mall started going under. We lost the Lucky's, and God knows where it's going. But what I really find interesting is that all these people who don't have children that live and attend Cupertino High School are telling everyone in the east end of Cupertino how lucky they are that all the 3 million trillion high school students from Vallco are going to be going to Cupertino High School. It really makes me happy and excited to know that every other person in Cupertino who doesn't have children at Cupertino High School, and every other city who don't have children going to Cupertino High School, get to tell us in the East End how grateful we should be that we should be having our high school overloaded by an overloaded shopping center with too much housing. Okay, that's the Rancho perspective. I bet a lot of people don't realize that the Fort Bay project, which is taking over Meridian Plaza at Kiley and Stevens Creek in beautiful West San Jose with their Stevens Creek Boulevard Urban Village, they approved 800 housing units there. All those wonderful high school students will be going to Cupertino High School too. A lot of people don't know that. That's the school boundaries for Fremont Unified. They're not going to Lynbrook. They're not going to Prospect. They're going to Cupertino High School. Why is that? Why are we letting this happen? Well, that's why people in the East End are upset. We feel like our high school is being used as the guinea pig or the lamb, the sacrificial lamb for everyone else because no one else has their high school impacted. Let's take the load of students and put them in Monte Vista. God forbid, sorry Cupertino. Let's put them in Prospect High School. Let's put them in Mitty. Let's put them in the Sunnyvale's high schools. Okay, I'm running out of time. I don't want anything over 4 stories. I want retail, limited housing. You need to protect the double row of ash trees on Stevens Creek Boulevard in front of Sears because they are in the urban village regardless of what anyone says. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Jennifer. Next I have Jean Bedord, followed by Danessa Tekmansky. Welcome, Jean.
Good evening, Mayor Scharf and Honorable Council. My name is Jean Bedord, and I object to this study session tonight. This was called less than a week ago. Your new city manager has been here, what, 2 weeks? It should have been scheduled in September when the general public is back in town. A lot of people are gone during this time period. They have kids and they're vacationing. Secondly, this item echoes Measure C, which failed 61% to 39%. This is irresponsible government. I urge you to leave the allocations as they are and take the no action tonight. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And last is Danessa Tekmansky. Welcome, Danessa.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and staff, and welcome to our new city manager. My name's Danessa Tekmansky. I'm a Cupertino resident of 32 years. First, I want to say that I was not impressed by Sandhills and Scott Wiener's accusations against our city and Better Cupertino in this morning's Business Journal. I'm really getting sick of them trying to sell the narrative that we don't want housing at Vallco. No, we don't want excessive office that will dig us deeper into the housing hole at Vallco. Secondly, I want to make it clear again that Better Cupertino's #1 concern right now is balanced housing that reflects actual public needs in both type and income for the jobs that we have already created at Apple and elsewhere. Obviously, Sandhills' #1 goal is profit and meeting the margins of their benefactors in Abu Dhabi, who have been funding most of their recent purchases in Silicon Valley. What could be more attractive to foreign investors in office space and luxury housing next to the most profitable company in the world? It appears that public welfare and compromise are not in their lexicon. Developers and politicians are wining and dining our young people with promises of plentiful, affordable housing, more likely cheap 375 square foot cracker boxes amidst unbearable traffic and dirty air. Every proposal that Sandhill has made, whether it's the Hills of Vallco, Tier 2, or their creative version of SB 35, makes Cupertino's housing imbalance far worse than it already is. Even California's most prestigious economists and housing experts agree that bills like SB 35 are going to make housing more expensive and drive out all but the better paid tech workers. Sounds like Sandhill and Wiener are talking out both sides of their mouth. As Sandhill whines about housing, Senator Wiener is getting involved in Cupertino, which isn't even his jurisdiction. Yet he's rallying for project, developer, and housing bills that will entitle more office and luxury units that will make our housing imbalance and costs far worse. Has anyone looked into his campaign funds and pet projects lately to see how many big tech real estate and developers are contributing, including Sandhill? It's rather enlightening. Note also that Sandhill's employee, Candace Gonzalez, is on the CASA steering committee, pushing the very housing bills that they're using against us. I'm tired of the narrative that Cupertino is responsible for housing anyone who wants to live here. Cupertino is responsible for housing the workers for the jobs that we have created, as is every other city. You show me one other landowner or developer that's demanded such entitlements or that's bullied us, threatened us, or maligned our city and its residents like Sandhill. They don't own our city, only a piece of land like everyone else here. Our city needs to stand strong for housing at Vallco that balances our community's needs with only enough office that is necessary to fund the BMR housing or any other critical needs. That includes our growing senior housing and service needs, which is a whole nother subject, and that SHP is likely to ignore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Danessa. Next, we have Kitty Moore, followed by Angela Roush. So if anyone else that wants to speak, please put your card in now. Thank you. Welcome, Kitty.
Good afternoon, City Council. I had written February 22nd, 2018, and I need to say that I'm just representing myself. But more than a year ago, I requested that you move to Scenario B, and I'd like to reiterate that. That is my preference. I'd also like to see the 2 million square feet of office removed from the Vallco site. It looks as though that has been what the developer has wanted there all along, and I think it's appropriate to remove it and have some discussions about it. And lastly, there are height limits for Vallco. You stated them in the city's EIR for the Vallco specific plan. It's 85 feet for the section which is zoned planned regional shopping, and then 30 feet for planned commercial, which is the Sears site and the Sears automotive portion of the site. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Kitty. Next I have Angela Roush, followed by Govind. Welcome, Angela.
Hi, my name is Angela Roush. I'm a resident of Sunnyvale. I've been there about 15 years. We need housing. We are also a community and neighbors. My children go to school in Cupertino at Homestead High School. I go to the gym in Cupertino. We are like together. So we need to together build housing. We need to move forward with what has been on the table. I also wanted to just let you know, when we have developers who are willing to build houses, it gets a lot of housing built. I built an ADU. It took almost 2 years to build. It's 313 square feet in 2 years. Please build housing now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Welcome, Govind.
Good evening, council members, city manager, and our city clerk, attorney, and also as assistant city manager. First of all, it's very heartening to know that this agenda item has been added. I did send a communication way back on November 21st of 2017, and for some reason I never got a response to that. In any case, for the last 2 decades, Cupertino has always had a very high jobs to housing ratio amongst its neighbors as well as in the county. There's no rationale to increase this ratio per se, and much less reason to allocate an obscene level of office space to one specific project site within Cupertino. In view of this, please consider the following changes to Table 1. Remove the office allocation completely. Set the residential allocation to comply with the RENA allocation for this site, 339 units or so. Reset the GPA limits for the Vallco site to its pre-2014 level. Set maximum height limit and setback and building plane ratios as per pre-2014 limit. I know that this has been what we have been aspiring as many of the local residents since pre-2014 timeframe. I would appreciate if you people consider this seriously at this point of time. We already have a spate of bills which are waiting to become laws, which will actually take away local control completely. So I would like you to consider this as favorably as possible, as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Govind. The last card is Kelsey Baines. Welcome, Kelsey. Is Kelsey here? Guess not. Okay. So that ends the public comment on this item, so we can move on to discussion here. So does anyone wish to start? John?
This is Kelsey Baines, I believe.
Oh,
yeah. Can I start?
I'm sorry. Are you Kelsey?
The traffic was very bad
Okay.
getting here, so I apologize. My name is Kelsey Baines. I'm a psychologist. I serve homeless veterans. I'm here representing myself. No one has paid me to be here. So it's been interesting. The last time I was here, I had a very interesting experience, to say the least. I waited here until almost 1 a.m. to speak about the Vallco item. The now Mayor Scharf accused me, or suggested, I'll say, that I was making things up. The now Vice Mayor, Liang Chow, was heckling me from the audience. It was just a bizarre experience. But at that meeting, I was really encouraged that the council went with the community's plan to move forward with a plan with a lot of community benefits. And instead, there's been this lawsuit, and now we're diverting back to the SB 35 plan. And I just have to say that it's been very disappointing, the actions that this council has taken. I'm not under any illusions that you're going to make a decision that I agree with tonight, so I'm not really gonna try to convince you. But what I'll say is thank you, because when I lobby the state government for action on housing, I talk about my experience here and what an example of bad governance it is. Mayor Scharf isn't even making eye contact with me, but it's an emergency, the housing crisis. People are living on the streets, people are living in their cars. Homelessness is up 30%. And when you are inactive, when you try to delay housing, it hurts people. So your actions, I think, are villainous. And I think you all make for good villains here in Cupertino. You built a huge campus, and you just keep stymieing housing at every turn, and it's not acceptable. You're making the case for SB 330, so thank you.
Okay, so there's one more card, but it came in after I said no more cards, so we won't be reading that one. We won't have that person speak. Okay, John.
So, obviously, we hear a universal message, we need housing. I agree, I support housing. We are also here we have a duty to represent the residents of Cupertino. Yes, we'd like to fix the ills of the entire Bay Area, but we have Cupertino that we have a duty to and get as much housing as we can. Hearing the speakers is very moving. I think it clearly needs to be said that 2 million square feet of office, or roughly that, means around 10,000 workers. And when we talk about adding 2,400 or 2,600 housing units and 10,000 workers, have we helped you? There's 7,500 more workers that are not going to get into one of those spots that's going to be in line with those of you who need it. We want that housing for all the residents that can get those units without having to make the situation worse. We need to make sure we're making good decisions for the community and not making it worse. That being said, there are housing sites and projects that have shown they are cost effective. On Lawrence and Monroe is Monticello, 825 apartments. There's no office there to be fighting for those units. They're all apartments, but that's fine. There's Nuevo at Lawrence Expressway and Central. I drive by both of those every day. Nuevo has 950 units, 450 for sale units, and 500 apartments, and no office. It is cost effective to make those. I think we can do similar type things at Vallco. The one thing we are also missing at Cupertino is a downtown. We had the same developer purchase the piece of land there at Tantaw on up to close to Wolf, and he gave it a wonderful name, Main Street. This is going to be Cupertino's Main Street. Let's knock on our doors and ask how many people feel that that is Main Street. Now we have the last large parcel of land, and we still need a main downtown area for our community. I truly believe this can be a win-win situation. It can be a win that the developer is going to make a lot of money. The housing is going to help a lot of people. And the residents can have a significant downtown area. To make that happen, though, I think we do have to make some decisions tonight. Leaving the 2 million square feet of office, that really hurts the housing issue and prevents Cupertino from having a true place for our community. So I'm here for the residents. I want to hear from every resident in Cupertino. I want to do everything I can to record and make sure I understand those that support the different types of development, and I will always vote for the majority. It won't be what I want. My vote will be for the majority of the residents in Cupertino, now and always. So don't worry that things aren't moving as fast as they should. Send in your information. We're going to be doing a lot of outreach. We had a town hall Saturday night, and it went really well. The residents were very pleased that we were here to listen to them. And we will be doing a lot of outreach in our community, going all the different areas. For the people that aren't able to come here, we want to hear from them. And again, we want to hear from every single one. And democracy is, the majority decision is what the elected officials have a duty to represent. Okay, Steve, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Paul.
So I've agreed with what John was saying ever since I was elected at the end of 2014 with regard to removal of the office allocation. I was never in support of it precisely because of the imbalance between jobs and housing. And I've never heard a really good response to that. And so I'm consistently still not in support of having that 2 million square feet of office allocation. I think that we need to take a look at the housing and get a number that would be agreeable as much as possible. I can be flexible with regard to what would get the most number of votes and support tonight. But it seems like we have the allocation of 389 units there, which is roughly 35 dwelling units per acre spread over 11 acres. I think we should talk about what makes more sense in terms of the overall number that we want to arrive at. But also, I think if we take away the office allocation and stick with our current housing allocation there, I think we still have the opportunity in the future to add back more housing units. If we get the sense that there is a point in time where the developer or the owner of that property wants to go ahead and engage us in a conversation. And I commend our mayor for reaching out to the property owner earlier this year with regard to writing a letter. It was a very nice letter with regard to saying, hey, look, let's sit down, let's talk, let's try to have a conversation about what makes sense that everyone can live with and will be beneficial both for you and the community. To my knowledge, he never got a response on that.
Correct.
And I think it was one of these kind of mass emails basically saying we're going with SB 35 and basically casting aspersions to the current city council. But I don't want to take up too much of the time because we actually have another session starting at 6:45. But with regard to what's been said in terms of whether the council has the interests of the community locally and at large in mind, I think it's more fair to say that if you're really looking at the balance between the number of jobs and the housing units you put in, that's really the metric and the tool we have to work with. You also have transit moving into that equation, and this council is unified with regard to its desire to make sure that transit is as good as we can make it. But if what we're doing is we're overloading a 50-acre site with so much congestion that we can't balance out and justify the number of housing units that we are delivering in terms of the number of people that we're adding during the work week, and also the people that will be coming in to work here. Where are they going to live? Where is that shortfall going to be? Whether you say that's 7,000, 8,000, 10,000, or 12,000 jobs, it's still many more jobs than the 2,400 units that are being contemplated, or any number of units that were being contemplated previously. And so I have been always consistently questioning with regard to saying, hey, look, you're talking about 2 million square feet of office. Let's have a conversation about that, whether any is needed, not just for the balance part of it, but of course for the profitability and what else we could be, potentially adding to the mix over at Vallco. This was originally a 1.2 million square foot shopping center, and it's been a shopping center for a long time. I think we have community consensus and council consensus at this point that we need to be delivering housing units. And so I'm happy to have that conversation with regard to what that number is that we can be placing there. I think also when you look at the community amenities, there is an expectation that in our community, retail is not dead. This is something that we can put forward as potential amenities. Are there other types of usages of the space that we could be looking at that could be beneficial for the broader community as well? And I just don't know whether it lies within adding such an overwhelming number of jobs vis-a-vis the number of housing units that you're proposing to put in there. So that's been a consistent 4.5-year position. I'll stay with it. With regard to the specifics of the proposals, there are 3 options. Mainly, I would support option number 2 with the removal of the office land use, setting a height limit. I don't know precisely what that height limit would be. I think a range of something in the 5 to 6 story or possibly 7 story, range would make sense in terms of how we go forth from tonight, and then hopefully that will impel a good faith conversation with all the various stakeholders that are in the conversation here. So, to sum up, at the end of it, we most certainly need the housing units. I don't think anyone is going to be advocating, removal altogether, going to option B from our council. I think it's been heard pretty loud and clear that the housing units are needed. If you remove both residential and office uses from Vallco, I think that generally the consensus is that you're not going to be able to get a development on just purely retail uses. Even if you were to put, say, a 50-acre mega meeting space and hotel or something that could be even, kind of potentially feasible or viable. I think it's really one of these things where you have to pick one or the other. We're in the middle of a housing crisis. We acknowledge that. So let's pick the housing, and being consistent with my positions from the end of 2014, I would say at this point, remove the office allocation at Vallco. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Rod?
Thank you. Well, we say we'd like to hear from all the voters. We want to hear from every resident. This council 2 months ago rejected that opportunity in dismissing a vote in a general election on the Vallco specific plan. We say we'd like to have more housing, and we're serious about finding alternatives to the SB 35 project. Frankly, if we downzone this property, we give direction to city staff to do that tonight, such that we inhibit any economically feasible project. We're basically sending a message to the state legislature, we're sending a message to Governor Newsom, and frankly, we're sending a message to the court that's hearing the SB 35 case about our desire to get serious about building a lot of housing, which we need. And to the developer, we haven't gotten a response. Well, you know what? It takes 2 to tango. If you want to have a serious conversation, then keep throwing barriers in the way, keep writing briefs to the court, keep doing this and that, and what we will get, right, is what do you expect a developer to do if they don't think they can negotiate in good faith? I think if we want to get the ship on a positive course, we have to stop throwing out barriers. Downzoning this property is putting a sea anchor out and subjecting us to whatever the courts will decide, whatever the state legislature will decide. And yes, we are called out now as an example of a recalcitrant city that's not really interested in solving this problem. So it's really nice music. I think the way you begin to build a relationship with a developer who's the partner in this is you say, okay, we're going to leave these allocations alone. We're going to try to engage you in a good faith effort. We could unwind these lawsuits. We could come up with a plan that you like better than the specific plan, great. But by downzoning and taking away the office allocation, I think you're sending a red flag. So I think we ought not do that. I think we ought to trim our sails and get this ship on a positive course. But anything we would do to downzone this at this time with the SB 35 project in hand is just an invitation to saying, we're not really serious about picking a project that you and we could agree on together. Thanks.
Great, okay. So I saw in the news yesterday or today, Google just pledged $1 billion for housing, including providing land. Microsoft, Facebook, Kaiser also have been pledging money. Hopefully, the biggest company in Cupertino, Apple, will also step up and commit to providing money for housing. Now, Darcy mentioned the jobs housing balance, and I recall in 2008 when Bill Clinton spoke at the Democratic National Convention, and he was talking about how they brought 4 budget surpluses in a row, and he said it was simple, arithmetic. And I just wonder if some of the people that are lobbying for so much office space and so little housing really understand that worsening the job housing balance makes it worse for workers and low-income people. It doesn't make it better. So please do the arithmetic. No one up here is opposed to building more housing. We are opposed to worsening our jobs housing balance, which always comes back to bite us. We'll get higher RENA allocations in the future because the state will legitimately say, hey, you added so many jobs, where's the housing? And we'll say, well, we're sorry. The council approved all this office, but not enough housing. So we have to get out of this mindset of worsening our jobs housing ratio over and over again. And one speaker mentioned the Hamptons in regard to Plan B. So the Hamptons is already approved to tear down the 342 units and build 942. And that's in Plan A. They wanted 150 more. When I talked to them, I said, well, if we gave you 150 more right now, would you consider building instead of delaying? And they said no, because they're worried about recessions, construction costs, various other things. So it's not really true that nothing would be torn down under Plan A. All of the Hamptons would have to be torn down under Plan A and rebuilt with 942. And let's see, what else? Oh, in regard to a few weeks ago when the council voted to rescind resolutions and ordinances. Now, it is true that signatures were collected and council members, including myself, said we would want to put it on the ballot. And personally, if someone from the property owners organization had shown up at that meeting to lobby for putting it on the ballot, the outcome might have been different, but no one did. And the only thing I could take away from that is that they just really didn't want an election at all, because without an election, they have a much better talking point. And the reality is the one-year clock started when those were rescinded. So a substantially similar specific plan could be brought back within a year instead of waiting till an election in 2020, and who knows what the outcome would be. It would probably be that they would be rescinded anyway based on previous elections that we've done that sort of thing. So I agree with Darcy. I think the main thing here is removing the 2 million square feet of office. Personally, I'm fine with a lot more than 389 units that are in Plan A. We would have to look at various things, including density, height, setbacks, and school impacts to decide what an appropriate number would be. We would not take away the retail. The option would still be there to put retail in. That's the property owner bought the land zoned for that retail, so there's no point in taking it away. They're certainly free to put it in or not. So I would support the option where we take away the office allocation, which really isn't an allocation at all anyway. It was if there was a specific plan approved. So that's my position on this. Thank you. Yeah, we're done. So in terms of action to take tonight, this is just a study session. So we'll just have the staff come back with
So I would say
something we can vote
that
on.
my position, which I didn't fully say then, is option 2. I'm definitely in favor of keeping the housing allocation that we have got for there, but removing the office.
So
I heard removing the office. I heard the sticking with option 2 in terms of a majority. I heard looking at housing, keeping at least the 389, possibly looking at more, and looking at heights. I didn't hear anybody talk about anything above 7 stories.
Right.
I'd like to see it be 5. You know, again, I toss out these other projects that are successful, and they're 5 stories.
And would council like something to come back here, or would you like us to take it up with the Planning Commission from here forward?
I would take it to the Planning Commission
Yeah,
first.
take it to them first and then to here.
And then one request I have with regard to the housing allocation, if we were to add more to our housing allocation, we don't get credit in this cycle. And so if we could propose a way, if staff could go back and propose a way such that we get the housing allocation credits for the next upcoming cycle, then I think that would be pretty useful for us and more compelling in terms of, you know, having the justification to increase the number of housing units. So I think this current cycle ends in what, 2023, is it?
Yes.
Perhaps we could be looking at some kind of phased plan. I mean, just doing some very quick math. I mean, if you were looking at 11 acres and 35 dwelling units per acre, that would get you to around the 389 units. But if you were looking at something more significant than that, Vallco is roughly divided along Wolf between a 30-acre part and a 20-acre part on the west and east, respectively. And you're kind of looking at those particular areas. Maybe those proposals could be kind of mapped out with regard to that metric of 35 dwelling units per acre, and then applying the 35% density bonus. So that does get you to very significant numbers. That's where I'm at. I don't think I would apply the entirety of the whole 50-acre site to a 35 dwelling unit per acre metric. But in terms of just putting a good faith effort and also looking out for the interests of our future allocation requirements, I think those are the factors that you could consider in terms of saying, hey, look, Cupertino is making a very substantial commitment to housing. We don't want to make the housing crisis worse. And frankly, taking away local control and basically glossing over elements that will make the housing crisis worse is not helping the housing crisis. And so I think overall, with that set of directions going forward, I think that really puts us in a good position to say, hey, look, we're looking at this from the perspective of how do we deliver more units such that the people that are working locally have a place to live. And also, when you're getting to those numbers, you're making it economically viable. So that those are just some final and maybe the majority has different thoughts on it, but.
Well, one thought, right now we have 15% requirement for below market rate. As we increase the number of units on that site, can we increase the percentage, or is it just going to be 15% of a greater number.
Well, that's our current ordinance is 15%, but we
Right.
can look and see if there are options in that regard.
Okay. I mean, without changing the ordinance, or do we have, would we have to adopt a new ordinance?
That's, I'm not prepared to answer that now, but I think it
Okay.
might be challenging.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, there was a list of questions on the back, and I think we've kind of got consensus on most of them. I'm not sure if you want to give more specific direction about height limits for the site. I've heard up to 5 stories, potentially. Should we move forward with that?
I would say keep it a flexible range, since you've heard 5 stories from Councilmember Willie.
5 to 7?
I said 5 to 6, possibly 7,
Okay.
if there's a compelling enough reason in a plan that comes forward.
Mhm. And the last question we had is about whether the policy should expressly allow additional development if a specific plan is prepared and approved in the future. And if you want that language to remain in, that these are the objective standards right now, but if someone comes forward with a specific plan that the city approves, that we could have a higher amount of housing or office than what's in there now.
I think you just brought up a very important point, and that is because of the housing bills and the objective standard requirement, I do think we need to stick with the objective requirement at 5 stories, and we would consider above that, providing that there was enough of a sufficient reason for it. Once we put in the 7 stories as the objective standard, then we do not have any authority at that point to require a nicer downtown area that's going to really be for the residents. We run the risk, kind of like we have now, that a developer is going to maximize his profit with 7 stories throughout, and again, the community is left without a downtown or a main street. And I really think we need to deliver something like that for the community. We are the only one in the Bay Area that doesn't have a real downtown or main street. So I think that, I hope we understand that when we put that verbiage in there for 7 stories is the objective standards, we do not have any authority then to prevent that, and we may not get, our downtown.
Right, but I think what she was asking, if we made it 5 stories, should we have the option to approve a specific plan that goes higher?
Yeah, or just making it express in the general plan that you could say if you wanted to pick 5 stories, that 5 stories is the limit, but we could go higher if there's a specific plan that's later approved
Right,
by
I mean,
the council.
if we had a specific plan that had more affordable housing, then, right, we might want to go higher. It's
Right,
very
so
possible.
the specific plan could also say that the housing could go higher if there, or this policy could say that the housing could also go higher if a specific plan is prepared, or with affordable housing.
I mean, I would say maybe have a little bit of flexibility as to the height. If Councilmember Willie could agree to 6 stories, then we can make it a little bit more rigid, and that majority sentiment to that last question would essentially be no, with possibly the exception of housing units. If you're talking about delivering more affordable housing units, then we would need to take a look at specifically what metrics, what objective factors would be, under discussion. Would it be height? Would it be setback? Would it just be the numbers? At 5 stories and 35 dwelling units per acre of residential units, I think you can comfortably fit your units into there. I mean, especially if you're talking about variable sized units. I mean, an acre is 40,000 square feet, 5 stories of that. I mean, you can fit 35 dwelling units per acre into a 5-story structure. And so, I guess we don't have to get that granular and specific right now, but overall, I think direction is essentially, let's try to create an envelope that is generally adhered to. And if we can express some policy consideration that encourages more housing, especially affordable housing, let's do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we really want to avoid this constant spot zoning. I mean, let's craft a general plan that's reasonable. We don't have to keep having people come forward with this GPA process. So, yeah, I could go with, what did you say, 6?
I said 5.
5. I mean, I could definitely go with 6. If,
So I'm hearing.
Well, we don't need to be that specific right now, I don't think. The
No,
Planning Commission will
right.
look into this.
But it sounds like 6 or 5,
Yeah.
and then there could be a specific plan that would have additional housing, especially if it's affordable housing.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and just to wrap it up, I mean, we have had some discussion about extremely low-income housing as well. So, you know, if you could wrap that into, for the developmentally disabled, into the encouragement factors, I mean, that would be something that I would support with perhaps a concession.
And there was a question about moving forward to study additional housing at the site, or it sounds like there was some direction to see about working that into the next housing cycle.
Right. I mean, the 389, frankly, I don't think is enough, but we would want to get credit for the additional housing we built on that site in the next cycle. And it probably would not be built into the next cycle anyway.
Okay, so staff will explore how we could do that.
I mean, there might be something where you can phase particular parcels and their development over time, so, such that 389 would be delivered before 2023. And then subsequent to that, you are then in a different reallocation cycle. Can we break a few minutes before the...
Right, okay. So anything else? All right, so we can break until the next meeting at 6:45. Thank you.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Madam City Clerk, can you conduct the roll call, please?
Councilmember Sinks?
Here.
Councilmember Willie?
Here.
Councilmember Paul?
Here.
Vice Mayor Chow? Here. Mayor Scharf?
Here. Okay, so we're on to ceremonial items. The first item is proclamation recognizing the Monte Vista High School boys volleyball team for winning the Northern California Championship. I think I saw a video presentation. Is that here?
Could you go?
Welcome.
Okay, good evening, Mayor Scharf and City Council. Thank you for taking time from your busy schedule to recognize our local high school team for their highest accomplishment in a team sport. Cupertino schools are well known around the country for excellence in academics, but this team here proved to the world once again we could be excellent in studies and achieve top honors in team sports too by winning high school volleyball NorCal championship twice in a row. Hopefully we can repeat it next year. Winning NorCal championship is the highest honor a high school team could achieve in this sport. This win made Monte Vista High School as the second ranked team nationally in this sport, a volleyball powerhouse. The team did not lose a single game in any of the NorCal tournaments other than 3 games lost in an invitational tournament in San Diego. This team boasts a winning record of 37 wins and 3 losses. All of this is possible because of our dedicated and highly committed coaching staff led by Coach Paul Chu and motivated kids. During the NorCal championship game, I heard one of the Harker parents say, "Look how deep Monte Vista coaching staff is." This is a highly funded private school team marveling at our public school coaching staff. We are extremely blessed and lucky to have such a dedicated coaching staff and motivated kids. Without further ado, let me invite the one and only Coach Paul Chu to say a few words.
Thank you, City Council. This is our second year in a row. And I want to, first of all, have the players stand up and turn around and acknowledge your parents for everything that they've done. At the end of the day, this doesn't happen without tremendous family support. We've got, our program is only as good. I can take all the credit in the world, but that's not true. The players and the family behind them gives us the support and the energy, and they're as much as part of the success as anybody else. So I want to thank you for the recognition, second year in a row. Hopefully, maybe we'll make this a regular thing, and we'll come back next year as well. Mooney's going to play a pretty exciting video clip here.
Okay, so I'll just give you a brief background on this. So the finals game was tied at 2 sets each. Monta Vista ranked number 2, and we got to the match point, with Harker, which is ranked number 4 nationally, just one point behind. And here are some highlights and yet another best finish that you would ever see. Just give me a second. Why is it not coming?
Okay, Muni.
As this. So as they say, defense wins the game. As you saw in the last point, suddenly defense brought us through. So what this meant is, you will see, if you go to the national rankings, if you can show the slides, Grace. So you'll see our high school ranked number 2 on the national rankings. Right? Here are some accomplishments of Monta Vista season. Slides will be with you, so you can look at it. So we won CCA finals as well as NorCal championship this year. So without further ado, Coach, do you want to call the players?
Sure.
So, do they come up?
Yeah, you can go ahead.
Right, we have proclamations for all the players
Okay.
and the
Players,
coaches.
yeah.
So right, you can all come up on stage now.
Okay, why don't you guys, I'll call your name up, just come up. Joshua Ho.
No, you can all come up together.
Okay, here we go.
And then
I don't have to do
you guys
this.
can pass these out. I'm not gonna.
No problem.
So the whole council.
All the players, coaches.
Wow, everyone's so tall.
You guys gonna need 2 rows, let's go. 2 rows.
I think we better stand in front. Darcy's the only Give all of
If everyone move a little that way, please.
RC was on the team, wasn't he?
Thank you guys, and thank you coaches. So let's be here again next year. Thank you, Mayor.
Yes, and I see one of my old bosses is in the audience, so congratulations, Darwin.
Thank you.
Okay, our next ceremonial item, number 2, we won't do because the person is not here. We'll move on to the proclamation declaring July as Parks and Recreation Month. So do we have a representative here, Jeff? And staff? So hopefully you have a brief presentation.
We have a very brief presentation. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jeff Melkis, Director, Recreation and Parks. What we'd like to do tonight, very briefly, is just tell you, and acknowledge and thank you for taking the time to make this proclamation, acknowledging the important work that the department does and that Recreation and Parks does around the country. So we're responsible, of course, for protecting our natural environment, providing quality facilities and quality recreational programs and activities. So the staff have a very short video that is playing behind you, just demonstrating some of the kind of things we'll do, and staff will come up and receive the proclamation.
Great. So if the council can come up. You don't play volleyball. I used to. I was a setter. Everyone this way? Okay, thank you. And our final ceremonial matter and presentation is from Sustainability Commission Accomplishments Presentation. Welcome.
Good evening. I am the vice chair, and this is the chair.
Chair Weber.
So let me just quickly go over some of the things we've been doing. It was there a moment ago. I think it was Buy Clean is the first one. This has been a continuing thing with the legislature starting last year and continuing into next. Next slide. Several critical issues. Like we've been helpful to, I hope, Roger Lee. We were kind of went over his presentation first and understand it. And one of the things we do is, of course, feed the input we get to the community. And then we worked on the Green Code update. Next. And then the Sustainability Speaker Series, and we got some good ideas for next year as well, has been the two presenters this year were Professor Mark Jacobson and then Amy Lee, Dr. Amy Lee from Silicon Valley Clean Energy.
And one of the focus of the Sustainability Commission is to do community outreach and to engage with the public. We have tabled at the Earth Day and Arbor Day Festival, at the Fall Festival, at the Cupertino Volunteer Fair. One other thing that is a priority for the Commission is to engage our youth. Gary here has given a presentation about the Green New Deal to the Cupertino High School Environmental Club. And also, this past school year, we had our first student essay contest where we invited CUSD students in grades 6, 7, and 8 to talk about what they see as sustainability issues or concerns for the city of Cupertino. Here, they're being awarded a prize of a certificate and a $100 prize award. This was at this year's Earth Day Festival. And we look forward to working more with you in the coming year.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure, of course.
Have you looked into so Amy Bailey is that second speaker. Have you been looking into what SVC has been proposing for REACH codes for decarbonization of new buildings?
Yes, in the sense that's on our work plan. It's had
Okay.
some general discussions, but that's all.
Yeah, I would certainly appreciate getting your take on that initiative.
And we will be discussing that throughout the coming fiscal year as well, as that is on our work plan. And so Gilly will definitely be providing information as well.
Yeah, I would just suggest if you're going to do it, you prioritize it high because
Okay.
we're going to have to take action on it sooner rather than later. I think the new codes go into effect toward the end of this year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Madam City Clerk, are there any postponements?
Yes, I have some good news for your rather long agenda. Item number 24, the weed abatement, that one parcel has been abated, so we can table that item. You still have to hear number 23, the brush.
Okay, great. So is this the time we should be reordering the, or should, after
You could
oral?
do that now, or you could maybe perhaps when that item, before the budget comes, you could
Okay,
order it.
very good. Okay, it's time for oral communications. I have about 10 cards. Everyone gets 3 minutes. We have Jennifer Griffin, followed by Sue Rainey, followed by, let's see, Shilpa. So welcome, Jennifer.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Jennifer Griffin. I wanted to take some time to discuss Highway 17. As you all know, this is an item that's sort of near and dear to my heart because I spend a lot of time on 17, 1 to 2 times a week, and sitting in multiple levels of traffic. And I think it's really interesting tonight hearing about Vallco and El Paseo and things that are happening in Sacramento, and nobody really gives a darn what happens to Highway 17. It is choked up with traffic. People sit in it for hours. Highway 1 and 17 has reached critical mass level. There's traffic loads there. The road is dangerous. Nobody does anything. It's completely ignored. We have to sit through long debates about Highway 85 and putting transit on it and moving stuff through downtown San Jose and trolley cars, etc. But no one does anything about Highway 17, and it is the fault of Santa Cruz County and Santa Clara County. Los Gatos does not step up to the plate to acknowledge that there's a problem. Scotts Valley, I don't think, has done much outreach. And Santa Cruz, I was pleased to find out recently, my mother actually saved an article out of the newspaper that said that there is a tremendous amount of work that's going to be done at Highway 17 and Highway 1 at the Fish Hook and all the way down to Capitola Mall. They are going to be putting up electronic signaling devices to indicate if there is accidents. They're going to be widening part of the road. That is directly because there were 2 semi-trucks that turned over on 17 2 days apart and tied up the traffic on a Tuesday night for everyone. And it probably backed up the Santa Cruz City Council, which was, and probably Santa Cruz County too, members that were going, and maybe somebody will do something about it. Right now, Scotts Valley is growing. There needs to be an overpass at Redwood Estates and Idlewild. If you're not aware of it, there were 2 serious, fatal, wrong-way drivers that were drunk. One woman ran a Ford huge truck into a telephone pole, and I happened to see it. She knocked over the telephone pole at Idlewild, and she managed to snap the line a mile down the road, and I talked to someone from AT&T who knows about that, and she broke the telephone pole a mile away with her Ford F-150. So we need an overpass there, and we need an overpass at Laurel Curve and the road that goes to St. Clair's Retreat, which I believe is called Vine Hill Road, badly.
Okay.
Nobody gives a darn about 17 except the people that drive it and risk their lives. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Sue Rainey, followed by Shilpa, followed by Larry Dean. Welcome, Sue.
Hi. I wanted to speak about the Ragnar Creek Trail. Recently, I've become aware of there's information out there saying that those who live along Lamar Drive or live along the creek are enjoying that creek as their own private playground. I've lived there for 20 years. Up until probably 5 years ago, I had a padlock on there because I had 2 boys, and just to avoid them going out there, I kept that on there because it would be considered trespassing to be out there. And the number of years that I've lived there, I've never seen anyone using it as a playground. Occasionally I would see someone, but I wouldn't know who they were. I have 2 concerns. One is that our community is changing. So I was at a Bible study at West Valley Presbyterian Church, and when I was in there, there was a homeless woman in the bathroom washing up. And then I walk in the morning, and I was walking through Wilson Park, and on 2 occasions in the last month, there was a homeless person in the park. So that concerns me as far as changes, what will happen long-term along this trail, who will be out there. And then lastly, one of my biggest concerns is this has been promoted as safe for children, and the trail ends at Miller Road. And so if their whole goal is to get more kids out of cars, I don't know if you've been along there, it's just a mess in the morning. So what's going to be done to make it safer to get kids from Miller Park to Cupertino High School? I don't know if anything can be done there, so that concerns me greatly. And the other thing is fencing along the creek. I called Santa Clara Valley Water, and it's still not all decided, but whether or not there's going to be fencing along that entire creek. And if you know kids, if they're out there, there's no fence, that's going to be a problem. So my recommendation is that instead that money is put into making safer crossings at Miller Avenue, at East Estates, and at Blaney Road.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Shilpa, followed by Larry Dean, followed by Huang family. Welcome, Shilpa.
Hi, so I'm for Regna Trail. So I've been resident here for 10 years and never knew why the trails were closed. They are public trails, but there is no reason posted anywhere why they're closed, and turned out there is no reason. I personally enjoy walking around the neighborhood. So does my child. I have a teenage kid, and I prefer my kid and her friends to walk around the trail rather than on the sidewalk. It's much safer that way, I think. And it's a public trail. It shouldn't be closed. And as for the safety concern that people are talking about, so we have Rancho here that's open for everyone in the country, and people do crowd there. I mean, it's impossible to get your parking on weekends, so I don't understand that point. But I definitely am for Ragnar Trail. I prefer it should be open for everyone in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Larry Dean, followed by Huang family, followed by Rhoda Fry. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and fellow councilmen. I've got a handout here, so this is a new thing for me. I've never done this. I'm going to zoom it out. A nice picture. I'm here in support of the Ragnar Creek Trail. The trail segment is a key piece of the 2016 Master Bike Plan that will connect nearly 400 Lawson and Cupertino High School students to their schools, create a green belt to 3 parks, and be a benefit to park users and recreational walkers. Combined with the McClellan Road improvements, it will also make Blackberry Farms and McClellan Ranch accessible by bike from the neighborhoods around City Center and the neighborhoods east of City Center. It will make business centers accessible by biking or walking to them, such as Cupertino Crossroads or Main Streets. It'll also make it safe and easy for moms and kids to ride their bikes. We have a great deal of support in the community for this key project. Over the last number of months, our team has collected nearly 1,500 signatures in support of this, of which 80% live within a half a mile of the actual trail. The council is going to have a major judgment to make here shortly, and that is to decide in favor of the few or the majority who will benefit immensely from the trail and its connectivity. Respectfully, the trail neighbors are concerned about their privacy. There are a handful of sites that will have some major impact, but the city's efforts to outreach have been very difficult and has not been productive due to residents not wanting to discuss solutions other than don't build it. One neighborhood area along the creek is Campo di Lozano, and it's a good example of how our residents have probably known for a long, long time that a trail is going to be built near their house. You can see from the schedule, in 2002 is when the tract filing for Campo di Lozano was made, detailing a 10-foot wide setback from Rodriguez out to what the CCNRs call a Ragnar Creek walking trail. So in 2002, it was already institutionalized. Later that year, the CCNRs were signed and filed with the county. And there's a section in there that talks about the pedestrian easements and access to the walkway. A year later, a joint use agreement was developed between the Santa Clara Valley Water District and the City Council. We would like to propose that you move the 65% solution discussion to the August timeframe, because most of our supporters are out on vacation and they won't be here in the middle of July. And so for the sake of transparency and feedback to you who have to make the decision on which way to go with this major project, we urge you to move this decision point to August 20th, I believe is the date.
Okay, thank you.
When our supporters will be back in town.
Great.
And thank you to the staff. You're doing a great job.
Okay. Oh, before I move forward, each person gets 3 minutes. After what happened at the last meeting, I'm not going to do this thing where you concede time to someone else, because that kind of got out of hand. So if you want to speak for 3 minutes, that's fine, and that's what you get. Next is Huang family, followed by Rhoda Fry, followed by Julia. Welcome, Huang family.
Hello. Dear Mayor, dear council member, dear city manager and other staff members, and dear Grace. This is about a small play shared structure. It's only 90-some square foot and 8 feet lower than maximum required. And we, in good faith, twice and compliant twice. Only when the city actually paid the money to build, even was told to be okay. And they were told us doesn't need a permit and to have neighbor waivers. Even the $40 here, the weed got brought in the agenda, and you can see how the officers' retaliation, harassment do so much to us to this day, and we can't even be on anything, talk about it. And the process is unfair, and adjudicator is his friend, is a data collector, which the fine to these days is excessive. And it's so $20,000-$30,000 already, and we constantly get a call from the debt collector and the lien people. And we don't know how this brought up because can't be seen in the neighborhood from outside the street as well. So this number 396-9460, we welcome anybody can help us to resolve this. And also, this is excruciating, horrifying, and devastating and traumatic effect for the little kids and elder children. We were singled out. And officers' reputations, retaliation, harassment is very famous in the city. We want you guys to stop those and abate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Rhoda Fry, followed by Julia, followed by Dave Wyckoff. Welcome, Rhoda.
Hi, I wanted to give you a quick overview of what's going on with the Lehigh application and Stevens Creek application. So here is the Lehigh property. It's owned by Heidelberg Cement Germany, one of the largest building materials companies in the world. They own 33 cement plants worldwide, and they are distinguished in California as being the #1 for labor safety fines, accounting for 39% of the labor safety fines over 8 cement plants in the state of California. Also, they are the only cement plant in California that is out of compliance with the California, with the Clean Air Act, too many Cs. Okay, so there's a property, they mine for limestone, they cook the limestone in a kiln at 2,400 degrees, and then we get an awful lot of pollution from that. And because the kiln is fired by petroleum coke. This is Stevens Creek Quarry over here. Okay, so just to show you this, this is their current reclamation plan area, and as you can see, it affects a huge watershed. So here we go to the plans. Okay, so you've heard about the new mine. That is right here between Lehigh and Stevens Creek Quarry. It's right here. It's called the Rock Plant Reserve, 60 acres. But there's actually 3 mining areas. Here's another one. It's right over here. It's over by the ridge. They're calling it a slope stabilization project, and it affects almost two-thirds of a mile of our protected ridge easement. 1972, this view shed was protected. It's right next to Rancho San Antonio, and they want to lower that by 100 feet. Currently, we have a deed, we own that deed, but it can be magically whisked away by a vote of the Board of Supervisors. 2012, they were going to protect this ridge by a buttress system. Now they say they need to take it down by 100 feet. At the same time, the waste area over here is expected to grow by 160 feet. And that's over here. That's the scar that you see when you drive down San Antonio Road toward the hills. You see that that beige line. Now, going to the third area of mining activity is over by Stevens Creek Quarry. They have about 86 acres over here. That's their active mine. They have some more acres down there, which was mined out about 25 years ago. They do concrete recycling and other activities down there. So they mine too close to the edges, and every year the county comes in and they do a they look at the walls and they say, well, the walls are too steep, but they didn't keep them from mining. So now what they need to do in order to stabilize the walls is they need to over excavate by, they say, 75.5 acres, almost doubling the area of their quarry. And how they're going to do that? They're going to lease land from Lehigh. So those are the 3 mining areas. Next is, while Lehigh is going to be exporting material on a private road between the 2 quarries, and they're going to process it here, the stuff goes out. Lehigh was going to fill their mine with waste from the West Material Storage Area, but now they say instead they're going to import it with 48 million tons of fill. So there you go, stuff getting imported, 660 trucks a day. Stevens Creek is going to do the same. And that is your very quick summary of what is going on at Lehigh and Stevens Creek quarries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rhoda. Next is Julia, followed by Dave Wyckoff, followed by Beth Nodal. Welcome, Julia.
Oh, thank you for letting me.
Oh, okay, okay, Julia Miyakawa, okay. I couldn't read your last name there, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'll make it clear
All
next time. I'm here to talk about Ragnar Creek Trail, which is really a flood control ditch dug by the Santa Clara Water District way back in the early 60s to protect the area from flooding. It was dug along the stream that feeds into Calaveras Creek. Today, with our environmental laws, probably this type of flood control ditch would not be able to be dug. But here we are today with a ditch more attractively called a creek. I remember when we first moved into our home on Fairlawn Drive in 1974, seeing the amount of trash thrown into the creek. The most disturbing to me was the motor oil dumped in the water. And this is before the cyclone fence went up, and after that, everything stopped. The local environmental groups, including the Sierra Club, Audubon Society, Native Plant Society, Santa Clara Valley Chapter, and the Grassroots Ecology have expressed how increasingly trails create stress on the diminishing quantity and quality of wildlife habitats and animal corridors in a letter dated January 10th, 2017, and sent to the Santa Clara Valley Water District. Because so many trails are built, the letter states that there is even more pressure to increase the number of trails to provide connectivity between the trails. It goes on to say several studies have been done to prove the negative impact of activities by humans on habitat areas. Therefore, the group supports leaving creeks without trails, especially where it is too narrow to accommodate one. And I feel Ragnar Creek fits that model. And also being too close to homes. Everyone supports trails, but we need to protect our environment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Julia. Next is Dave Wyckoff, followed by Beth Nodal, followed by Kathy Choli. Welcome, Dave.
Oh, thank you. A few of us were able to meet with city engineering staff yesterday to review the design of the Ragnar Creek Trail. Unfortunately, it seems that most major sticking points remain unresolved, especially at Lozano Lane and De Palma Lane. Bridge removal logistics for creek maintenance using a crane are incomplete. The proposed mid-street crossing solution at Blaney will add an additional choke point for some 8,000 cars a day. One of the Wilson Park Little League fields, including the huge backstop, all of the fences, the dugouts and all, may require being picked up and relocated some 10 feet to the north, ripping up a bunch of concrete and potentially impacting the T-ball field over here as well. Alternative designs to moving the Little League field appear to be even more costly. There's apparently no feasible scenario for locking the 10 separate gates at night, and no lighting is being provided. At some point, as costs mount, it's imperative that those of you on the council assess the viability of this project on a realistic cost-benefit basis. You'll recall that path opponents had collected 450 plus signatures from Cupertino residents by last August. But this project won't be based on any popularity contest. It'll be based on what's best for the community after your thorough review, and on whether there's real value being added. So let's take this part of the route as currently designed. If one enters the trail here at East Estates, they will then be forced to cross a bridge here into Wilson Park at a 90-degree turn, then turn again at another 90-degree angle here, passing along a bunch of trees here on the other side, and then they'll take a diagonal path back to the trail here. Pedestrians would have a much shorter route, just coming out and walking on the sidewalk on Lamar. Additionally, cyclists would have a more direct route straight through on Lamar as well. Then, to proceed to the very end of the trail, one could just turn from Lamar onto Blaney and then take a right on Pacifica. From start to finish, the proposed trail is actually a long cut. It's not a shortcut. Many commuters will choose to bypass it altogether. Let's save several $1 million and just stripe the existing roads with markings to make them as safe as possible and maybe add speed bumps if needed. Let's also demand realistic trail usage projections based on where people actually live and where they actually commute to. And finally, let's find out whether parents will be comfortable sending young kids to school along an unsupervised back alley path, knowing as we do how that same plan worked out in the 60s and 70s when the Wilson Park area was known as Wilson Elementary School. Thanks for listening.
Okay, thank you. Next is Beth Nodal, followed by Kathy, followed by John Liu. Welcome, Beth.
Hi, my name is Beth Nodal. So I am a cyclist and bike commuter, and I live in Cupertino. I'm a Cupertino resident, but I just want to make it clear that I don't own property that backs to the trail. Also, my kids bike to or walk to school every day, and that's because my husband has 2 jobs and I do not drive. So I have a vested interest in safe trails. So you might think that I would tell you that I'm for this trail, but I am not for this trail because I don't think that it's safe. I don't think it's safe for kids, and I don't think it's safe for multi-use because of the width. I also think this trail has some issues that haven't been resolved, and that honestly I don't see how they can be resolved, and that's specifically the pinch point at Lozano Lane. I think the latest work on that is plastic plants, which is interesting. I also have seen now that there's an impact on the baseball field, and basically I went to the Parks and Rec meeting, and what that means is they're going to take out such a large portion of the baseball field that field will no longer be regulation size, which means it will no longer work to meet the requirements to make it to the World Series or whatever that is. So it is not only upping in cost and a long cut, it seems just not feasible. I don't think it's safe, and I think for the children specifically to school, you're dumping Eaton kids out into a road that doesn't have bike lanes, and then you have to get through 2 more intersections. The same with the kids going to Lawson, then they have to then somehow cross Rodriguez Avenue. And I asked Prashant, and he said there's no anticipation of when in the future a crosswalk would be put in there at Rodriguez to cross the street. So I would want green bike lanes, big bike lanes, and I think being that Cupertino High, Lawson Middle, and Eaton Elementary don't have bike lanes, designated bike lanes on the streets directly adjacent to them, that should be the priority, not $2.1 million to a trail that isn't a route to school. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Kathy, followed by John Liu, followed by Elango Ganga. Welcome, Kathy.
Hi, good evening. Thanks for letting me speak. I'm here to ask you, when you see the 65% design, that you stop the madness on Ragnar Creek. This has been going on for quite some time. HMH has been consulting this project for over 2 years now. And during the design, they are uncovering some game changers. You just heard from Beth about Wilson Park, and also Dave talked about Wilson Park and the baseball fields. These things are game changers and costly. They will add to the cost of up to $400,000 and a 12 to 18 month delay if we go this route and continue with that. I would like to clarify the untruth. Sue actually mentioned this too, that the proponents, the notion that those abutting the trail are using it as their personal playground. I have never seen, since I have lived there, that anyone has used this closed trail for their personal playground. What I have seen is school-age kids jumping the locked fence to gain access to it. That is the reality. That is what happens. So don't be persuaded by the untruths of the personal playground. It's absolutely not true. I have a slide here that I'd like to share. This is from the transportation plan, and it shows the collision map. This is directly out of the map, and you can see that we're talking about over here. You'll notice I actually had that section blown up, and you'll see there aren't any dots. This is not a problem to solve. This is a safe area. Lamar is safe, Vicksburg is safe, Pacifica is safe. I mean, it just goes on and on that we are just trying to do something where there is not a problem. So if the council approves continuation of throwing more funds into this project, there will continue to be major deficiencies of sidewalks. And that is my next slide. This is also out of the transportation plan. Red means that there's no sidewalks. Come on, guys. We have plenty of sidewalks in the area where we want to actually put Ragnar Creek Trail and open it up to the public. So I'm asking you to take a look at that and still try to consider what is going on. With doing this, we have not fixed here's another one. This is supposed to be the bike boulevard. And by the transportation group, guess what? Some of those neighborhoods have not even been talked to yet. And this was supposed to be done in fall of 2019. It's almost fall. And I'm going to do my closing statement. Thank you. The project has certainly divided the community, and your job is to determine the critical projects that should be executed for the better good of the community. If the council is seriously considering to promote this trail or changing its priority rather than putting a stop to it now, there will continue to be cost overruns for consulting staff and certainly construction. New obstacles seem to be identified at every turn on Alternative 1. I urge you to do the right thing and abandon Alternative 1, and if you must continue, utilize Alternative 4 or even 5, and acknowledge the community feedback focused on library expansion, Vallco solution, bike boulevard safety, street improvements, park renovation, and procurement of Lawrence Mitty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, John Liu, followed by Alongo Gonga, followed by Gary Wong. Welcome, John.
Thank you. My name is John Liu, and I have been a Cupertino resident for 33 years. The recent proposal of the Ragnar Creek Bike Trail is the most disturbing action taken by the City Council in my memory. It is controversial due to the number of ill effects that are being forced upon the houses around the trail. I want to address particularly the section behind the Lamar Drive, which is here, and here's the Wilson Park. That uses this easement owned by the Water District. It is a very narrow path that, if built, Cupertino City is required to frequently remove the safety rail and the 2 bridges every time the Water District perform their routine maintenance. Notice the bridge right here, the docks part of this, one going and one coming back. The current proposed trail is cut off halfway by an existing ramp. That's why the bridge exists. It calls for those 2 new bridges to be built to facilitate truck access. These 2 bridges going to the Wilson Park and back to the proposed trail is only a few feet apart in opposite directions. One must be wondering, why bother creating unnecessary complication when the adjacent Wilson Park is begging to be utilized right here, a lot of space there. Why spend so much money to build a trail over the easement and forego the parkland that incur expensive new build and maintenance cost, not to mention the additional liability for the city and insurance money? There are other alternative proposals besides the current proposal. Notice this alternative 4. The alternative deserves serious consideration on their own merit. I urge our city council members to look at the alternative 4 that use only straight paths and existing crossing break. It does not involve water district easement, and it does not need the bridges that go nowhere. It is rather comical that a few weeks ago, Cupertino City sent me an inquiry about my opinion for a new tax proposal for a required city service. It asked me if I agree with the new tax proposal or against it. In light of the irresponsible spending proposal of this Regner trail, that decision felt easy for me. Hell no, no new taxes for Cupertino City residents if we were to spend this kind of money on such a short, irresponsible, and hard-act housing year project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next, Alongo Ganga, followed by Gary Wong, followed by Linda Wyckoff.
I'm Ilango Ganga, speaking for myself. I'm going to talk about the Ragnar Creek Trail. I had been to the city office yesterday to review the 65% design plans. It's still not at the 65% level. Maybe there's more issues to be resolved. So what I noted is many unresolved issues that is there, and new issues that have cropped up. Lozano Lane issues, it's not been resolved. De Palma Lane issues, not been resolved. Baseball field issue, this should have been ideally found during the feasibility study. I think the consultants and the staff members who are working on the trail were sleeping at the wheel, so that it's coming up now. If at all you've taken a $10 tape and then gone ahead and measured the width on the other side of the creek, you would have figured that out. Instead, we spent $165,000 then, and then another $380,000 on the design, which should have been found long ago. And it adds 2 new mid-block crossings. This is where the accidents do happen. That is one on Rodriguez and one on Pacifica, unprotected mid-block crossings. And then fencing. Still, fencing issue for the homeowners have not been resolved. It's actually an opt-in. Ideally, you need to really be transparent and put the budget of the entire fencing for the 0.8 miles of the trail, so that if any homeowner wants, they can opt out, but then you need to have the budget for the entire trail so that council knows how to make the decision. Next is the railings. Even though the city is proposing railings, of course there are more than 500 or 1,000 footings is going to be there in there, and the water district is reviewing it, and they are still worried about the maintenance issues and also the creek bank failures in future. So city will be drawn into maintaining that. And the other thing is, they have not yet approved until they see the final designs. Next is the trail width. The trail width as per the feasibility study was actually 10 feet. Now 40 to 50% of the trail is going to be 8 feet or below. A gentleman came and said that, there'll be 200 to 400 people who might be using it. If you do the width of the trail should be determined based on the number of users. If you do the analysis of that, this trail will get an E or an F grade. And people are talking about this is safer than the adjacent streets. Not necessarily. It's a narrow trail which is not suitable for a multi-use, where people can bike, walk, and also other kids will be going on there. People are not going to walk in single file. They're going to walk in groups. To summarize, there's a lot of issues that are yet to be unresolved. I still do not understand what problem the city is trying to solve. The streets that are parallel to the creek are actually 40 feet wide with 4.5 feet, paved path, that is sidewalks on either side of the street. And this area has ample of sidewalks. And it is also noted down in a Safe Route to School program. Stop this. I would urge the council to stop this and invest the resources and time and money, millions of dollars, into improving the citywide bicycle projects, and instead of putting this $3 million in a project that is of no use. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alongo. Next, we have Gary Wong, followed by Linda Wyckoff, followed by Lisa Warren.
Mayor Scharf, Vice Mayor Chow, council members, and staff. Last week, I too had an opportunity to attend a Parks and Recs Commission meeting, and also I met with Public Works to look at the 65% update on the trail design. And I'd like to just share my observations with the council. In my view, we are not at 65% because there are 2 sections of the trail, almost 2/3 of the trail, have unresolved issues. There's unresolved issues with Lozano Lane and De Palma Lane, as others have identified. There are identified issues with the bridges and Wilson Park baseball fields. So this is an ideal map. There were 4 options presented at Parks and Rec, and the recommendation or the options that seem to be the most favorable, and I would say they were all not desirable. So this is the least bad of the 4 options. So they're talking about moving the entire field 15 feet. That means changing the infrastructure, lighting, plumbing, concrete. I mean, it's just silly to try to do that. Here's the creek, here's the ballpark. When you look at the map, you know, the bridges are like a 1/4 of an inch. Here's is what a 45-foot bridge will look like. The bridges have been expanded to 47 and 44 feet. There are going to be 2 of these bridges. There's another view.
They're upside down. Thank you.
So you can see it's pretty good size. And so what you need to get these bridges, you need a big crane. And that's what it's going to look like. Right? And so Wilson Park doesn't have any roadways to get such a vehicle or a crane into the park. Nobody's even thinking about the operational aspect of this part of the trail. So there, you have housing all along Wilson Park. So there's really no way for this crane to get there. And then once it's there, where do you put the bridge? Do you put it on the baseball field? I mean, you have to think of these issues. We asked this question at the 65% meeting, and they said that's an operating budget. That's not our consideration. We're only considering capital budget. That's a job for another consultant. That was a crazy answer. And then one last point. This is Library Field. There's going to be a bike trail that comes through these trees. These trees are where most families sit during the weekends when their children are playing sports. So with the trail there, they're not going to be able to sit there. They're going to have to move and sit out in the sun. So those are little things that you're going to disrupt the activities for people who use Wilson Park and Library Field. So those need to be taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you. You're out of time. Okay. Linda Wyckoff, followed by Lisa Warren, followed by Jiang Yi. Welcome, Linda. Is Linda here?
I'm going to be coming after Beniter. I'm going to be finishing off her speech for her.
Okay. All right. Lisa Warren, followed by Jiang Yi, followed by Snow Gao. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you. So, I wanted to say thank you for 2 things. First being...
You speak in the microphone, please.
Again? Okay. First being, I received my first ever, and I believe first ever for anyone, items of interest communication from city manager. And I just think it's a good idea. I appreciate it. She did it within the first week she was here. And I think it's a good trend to follow. So thank you. And for anyone who participated in helping her do that, thank you as well. Secondly, Saturday night's town hall meeting, another thank you. I think it's long overdue. I realize only two council members can be in one of these meetings at a time. So I hope these continue and there's a rotation of council members and perhaps some planning commissioners, but I think it's a great idea. There was a large attendance in my opinion, so unless moving forward the attendance became smaller, I see no reason not to continue it, other than we had, from what I understand, staff that was volunteering to be here on a Saturday night, which I also appreciate very much because it was really helpful to have them here to answer questions in a more casual way. It was just a good vibe, in my opinion, for the most part. So that's really all I was going to say, but now I'm kind of forced by myself to say something about the Ragnar Trail, which I'm confused because some places it's called Ragnar Trail and sometimes it's called the Regna Library Trail, Ragnar Creek and Ragnar Library. And that's a little, I don't know. So I do need to give kudos to the people who have been coming meeting after meeting with good data and facts showing the issues. I don't know enough about the library park to speak to that problem, but I can tell you from being a longtime Little League volunteer at Wilson Park, field maintenance is a volunteer activity that takes hours and hours. To move a field sounds insane for this purpose especially. So I always thought I was trying to stay neutral on this subject, but I'm here to say that after what I have heard over the last few months, I'm leaning toward the no-go, and that's it.
Thank you. Next we have Jong-hee Yi, followed by Snow Gao, followed by Stella.
So is it okay for her to donate the time?
No.
Or, okay, so we will talk in
You can
this
each speak, yes.
Okay, my name is Jong-hee, and I'm a longtime resident in the city of Cupertino, and I object to Ragnar Creek Trail. And today I want to discuss about my opinion after reviewing the 65% design. Especially, I have a lot of concern about concern about this the East Bowl Field impact. So as we all know, just to quickly remind for those who don't know, the bridge that we are building will, and then the path continuing after the bridge will intrude into the West Bowl Park, the ball field in Wilson Park. So which will disqualify this ball field for sectional tournaments and above for little leagues. So the city is coming up with alternative plans to mitigate that plan. The first one will straighten up this trail on the south side by removing the existing ramp and creating another ramp on the north side for the water district access. This will have additional $400K additional cost according to the city's estimation, and this requires environmental regulatory permits. And the second alternative will move this bridge a little bit towards the east side so that it doesn't have to intrude into the ball field. This would require $250K for moving the bridge, and also it requires to remove the tree, which potentially could be a heritage tree, and it has also environmental regulatory permits required. The third option that I hear from the city officers that the city is actively investigating at the moment is move the entire field towards 8.5 to 15 feet, depending on who you talk to, when you talk to. So the city is not certain about how much modification it has to make. It not only has a lot of, moving every single piece in the ball field, it is a lot of work, but also it has a cascading effect or impact on other surrounding structures as well as north field. So for now, this is the current status of the walkways. For example, the widest area is 38 feet, I measured it myself, and 22 feet, the narrowest between the dugouts. But if we move this ball field 15 feet north, literally this ball field will touch this lawn area, which may be easily that we can create some walkways. But the narrowest point it will create after this movement between the dugout is only 7 feet, which is not enough. 7 feet is just enough for two persons to walk side by side, which is not enough to address the traffic during the tournaments as well as even for their practices. And in addition, there is this new ball field will encroach into the snack area that we need to either relocate this snack shack or we have to address that issues. And which essentially, reasonably speaking, which will entail to move this north side ball field further north also.
Please finish up because you're out of time.
Yeah, and as Gary also mentioned, I also have a lot of the other cost that is not revealed on the 65% plan. I was just going to add one thing. So these two bridges has to be removable, and in order to remove those, the crane has to come, but there is no space, no existing road wide enough to access, for the crane access, right? So for instance, I don't know what the currently city is planning, but just kind of naively speaking, if you are going to make this crane access through this path, then we will have to move the entire structures in this space. or if we are creating some other widen this existing trail and have the access from the side. I don't know if the crane is able to move this tree.
Please finish up. You're way over
right.
time.
Yeah. So all of this additional cost and also this madness, I really don't understand what the problem that we are trying to solve here, because there is already existing very safe road, Lamar Drive and Rodriguez, and everything is very safe. So this is like an unnecessary project that is not going to help for the safety of the students. So that's why I'm objecting, and I urge the council to vote for no for this 65% design.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Snow Gal, followed by Stella, followed by Tony Fong.
Hi, I came here actually try to support my friend Jong-yi and other neighbors. I live near Lama, but my house is not next to the trail which you are going to develop. But my question is why you want to do this project. I don't think it's a point. There's no point to do it because it's just the waste of the money. Lamar Drive is very safe. My kids, I saw so many students, they drive, they walk on the street. The road is very wide. It's very wide and safe. And the trail, I don't think it's a proper place to walk. Some areas is really narrow, and there's no water in the creek. Why they want to walk on a narrow trail without water? They can just walk on the street, and there are so many trails in the county parks. If people want to walk on the trail, they can walk. They can go to the county park. Why they need to do this here in the neighborhood? And I think if you want to spend so much money on such a short distance trail, it's a big waste. It's the waste of our money. And I think the priority is to make the pedestrian road more safety and the bike lane more safety. That's the priority. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Stella, followed by Tony Fong, followed by Benefir Dastur. Welcome, Stella.
Yeah, good evening, council members. I want to talk about Ragnar Creek Trail as well. Many people have already presented the fact, and I had a chance to review the 65% design. Now, right now I want to talk about the common sense. Right? It looks like so complicated, but actually, if you use your common sense, it's not. Okay. Okay. This is the trail we're talking about. Okay, it's a crystal beautiful shoe. Okay, everybody likes it and look beautiful, and it can bring fortune to Cinderella. But what we have here, Ragnar Creek area, we don't have Cinderella feet. Okay, the shoe doesn't fit. The shoe doesn't fit the feet. So what do we want to do here? Actually, we want to cut feet to fit into these shoes. Okay. Again, these feet, just like Ragnar Creek area. And what we are doing here is try to cut this feet, and we want to remove Wilson Park baseball field. We have problem with Lozano area land, and we don't even know how to deal with it. And our neighborhood is highly impacted. We want to just have very just we don't have enough solution to solve these privacy problems. Now, you even want to just have, spend a lot of money to do this cutting, like just ask the doctor, pay the doctor visit and use a high medical expense to cut its feet to fit into these shoes. It doesn't work. Now you have your Cupertino City Council, is here to make a good decision whether you want to do this. Okay. By the way, this is a Chinese idiom, and every Chinese know what that means. Okay. Here now I give a list of what we have already talked about in the past 1 year. Let's compare these shoes with the. Okay, I don't have enough time, so maybe let's say for shoes you need to consider price and budget, consider the quality and how it fit, and consider whether it's needed or whether it's wanted. But all these, I don't have enough time, right?
Yeah, you need to finish up. Thank you.
Okay, so maybe I skip this and let's move to the last page. Okay, all these facts have been already presented in the past 1 year. Now your council members will make a final decision, and this is a symbol. Actually, I think the meaning is beyond the Ragnar Creek Trail. Whether our city can pay attention to all the critical facts that residents presented, and whether the city is able to wisely use limited budget and prioritize projects, and whether residents in other Cupertino areas will face the similar challenge, similar problem tomorrow, and whether we can have a common sense to view this problem. So we request stop cutting our feet to fit into this expensive but useless trail. Okay,
thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Tony Fong, followed by Benefier Dastur, followed by Linda Wyckoff. Welcome, Tony.
Mayor, council members, my name is Tony Fong. I represent the Long and Care Homeowners Association. We are 6 houses that are adjacent to the proposed creek trail. First of all, everybody loves trails. Everybody loves safe cycling and pedestrian walkways. And so there's no argument there. However, I think this trail is a bad project and not the right option. There are many issues, as many people have pointed out, so I'll just go through 6 quick ones. First, the trail is just too narrow and unsafe. Compared to wide, safe streets like Lamar, this trail is actually, I think, less safe than Lamar. You certainly could not fall into a creek on Lamar. The cost continues to go up because of unforeseen issues. The latest being this whole baseball field fiasco. Unbelievable that we didn't see that initially. How much will this trail finally cost at the end? Who knows? The maintenance cost will be huge. The proposal is to have railings along the entire trail and countless bridges, now 1 or 2, we don't know how many. But each time the maintenance of the creek is required, we're going to have to remove those railings and bridges, put them back at high cost and probably damage to the structures and the trail every time you put heavy equipment out there. The trail goes against environmental concerns as well. Many environmental groups have said that they are not for city trails because of negative impact to wildlife and the need for stream preservation. The trail has limited access, only usable during the daylight hours. Since such a short trail, those that do not live on either end of the trail will probably bypass it anyway for more efficient routes. Everyone that lives adjacent to the trail will have their privacy and safety compromised. I've heard many stories about vandalism prior to the trail's closure. By reopening the trail to public access, we're going back in time. and exposing everyone to old issues. And just to set the record straight, as everyone else has said, this is not our private backyard. It is water district land. We would be trespassing if we went on it. So I was very upset to hear that people think that this is our private backyard. I urge the City Council to reject this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next we have Benefir Dastur, followed by Linda Wyckoff.
Somebody's phone.
Hi, good evening, council members. Facts are really hard. Facts are not romantic. They are boring, but they remain. Facts is where you have to base your decisions on. So as the City Council decides on budget priorities for the next year, please keep in mind that you are allocating taxpayer-funded dollars to deserving projects that serve the needs of citizens and just not special interest feel-good projects pushed by advocacy groups which appear good on paper but wasteful in practicality. This is not the way Ragnar Creek looks. It's not a straight line. A case in point, Ragnar Creek Trail, the project is fraught with major engineering challenges and resultant costs will run into millions. There are many, many reasons and facts to back this up. So what is the problem we are solving with the 0.8 miles of trail? It's an alternative to what? The safest streets in Cupertino with a width of 40 feet and shaded sidewalks of 4.5 feet, which are already marked as safe routes to school. The Calstran data and our bike ped maps in our bike ped plan both reflect the safety of the streets through their collision map. You will see that this is the Caltrans map. I don't think there is any doubt on that authority. Not a single street parallel to the trail is on this map. The project in the city's bike plan was a low-tiered project. The project was evaluated with a score of mere 48 out of 100. It was 38 in the list of priority of projects under Tier 2 before it was pulled out of line and snuck under McClellan Corridor in a Brown Act violation. But that's the matter for another day. The proposed Ragnar Creek is barely 0.8 miles of non-contiguous path involving mid-street trailheads on Blaney, Rodriguez, and Farallon. Contrast this with current existing safe crossing at stop signs on these streets that students use. Having children zipping in and out of blind spots at 3 different points, navigating additional hazardous crossing on busy streets, all to get from one point to another is absolutely not the safest way for them to get to school. Most collisions happen at street crossing. Not only does the research data show that, but our own bike ped report states that many collisions involving bicyclists occurred along arterials or at the intersections of arterial with existing bike infrastructure during daylight hours. The proposed trail is merely 0.8. There's a non-contiguous filled with obstructions with barely 8 feet across for users. It does not comply with even the basic common sense trail guidelines of Caltrans, AASHTO, or Santa Clara interjurisdictional reform. How do you justify spending millions on the trail that does not even follow common sense standard? The trail will have major impacts to Wilson Park. The major impact on homeowners. Here is the picture. Here is what we're going to get. Can you see that pink floret? We're going to get pebbles there. That is the homeowner's protection. The concerns that Rod raised, that the homeowner's concern should be addressed. We're going to get pebbles here. That's the homeowners. And we will be policing, because the sheriff has said your homes are vulnerable, you'll have to install backyard cameras, you'll have to install security systems to keep your home safe. Our insurance costs are going to be hiked up. Water district maintenance. Here is some pictures of the truck. You can see the width of the trail, how the trucks are, how close they are to the fence.
Yeah, please finish up. You're way over time.
Here it is. Way over time, okay. The actual cost of the trail will far exceed $2.45 million, disclosed to public, and will be closer to $4.6 million. And one last point, the water district says that they are against alternative 1 is the preferred alternative, that's in the feasibility report, but has the most adverse effect to district maintenance, access, and operations. Alternative 4 or 5 will have the least impact to the main. So even the water district does not want alternative 1, that is Ragnar Creek. Thank you.
Okay, and last we have Linda Wyckoff. Welcome, Linda.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm continuing Beniver's speech. So I would urge you to look at the facts, the cost of this 0.8 miles of wasteful project, and make a wise and thoughtful decision. The citizens of Cupertino deserve better. Please be driven by facts and need, and not a feel-good proposal and coalition group petitions for the trail, which have glaring omissions and misinformation. Here are some of them. There are only 10 people who are opposed to this trail. That is certainly not true. You all know it. And you can check the yard signs if you have any more questions. The homeowners abutting the trail are using it as their personal recreational trail. This is no trespassing water district land, and the homeowners can be cited like any other residents for trespassing the creek path. And you've all seen it, and you know this place is really a pit. You would not use it as a playground or a picnic ground. Apple Grant is funding the Ragnar Creek. Apple did not want any part of this path. Doesn't do them any good, and they probably saw the uselessness of it. And emissions. The water district does not prefer this trail because it hinders their maintenance work. That is so true. The maintenance guys, we've spoken with them, and they don't want it. The narrow width of the trail will have no lights and be open from dawn to dusk. The trail will remain closed during water district maintenance and whenever they direct the city to close it. And they found that a guy running around with a golf cart closing all the gates, 10 gates, isn't feasible. It doesn't make any sense. The baseball field in Wilson Park will be impacted, that's been said. Okay, the actual cost of the trail, they say 2.1 million. I think it's going to be more like triple. We're waiting to see the cost breakdowns, but when I see all these numbers adding up, they're all spoken up individually. When you add them all together and take all the ones that are spread about, it's going to be more like 6 million. And it does not matter if there are 1,000 signatures, 1,500 signatures. If the petition signatories are provided with misleading information, then the petition in support becomes questionable. And as my husband said, this is not a personality, a popularity contest. Please use your good judgment and your common sense and vote this down. Vote this out of Cupertino. And also another thing that I wanted to add is that we've been accused of harassing staff. We were pulled into this thing totally against our will, and we are in a defensive mode. We have to work to see what the city is up to and report back to the city council, because how else would they know? Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. That ends oral communications. We are on to reports by council and staff and our new order of the agenda. So we can start with John. Can you report on your last month, since we didn't have a meeting
So
on
we're
June
still
4th?
saving our other activities for the end. This is only committee assignments.
Committee assignments,
Yes,
correct.
so no committee assignments this week.
On May 23rd, I attended I'm next, right?
Yeah.
Right. On May 23rd, I attended the Silicon Valley Regional Interoperability Authority meeting. They approved their annual budget, and I'm pleased to report that it looks like they're really making a lot of efforts to build out the system. It's a radio tower emergency system for use by our various law enforcement authorities in the Valley. On June 3rd, Vice Mayor Chow and I met with a staff member, Katie Nomura, to talk about, as well as our new city manager, to talk about the commissions item that we have coming up. We're trying to put this on today's calendar, but it's a bit overloaded, so we're going to put that into the June meeting.
On both June 6th and June 13th, we had a library working group meeting, and I thought it was very effectively led by our staff member, Roger Lee, and attended by various members of the community, including those from the Cupertino Library Foundation, a couple of representatives from our own library commission, as well as a former commissioner and council member. Vice Mayor Chow attended the one on June 6th. Appreciate that attendance. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it. And so later on in the meeting, I will ask our council to authorize a delegation of authority to our city manager to go into a design and architectural set of agreements as necessary to go forward with the project. But yeah, I thought our library working group meeting is going along quite nicely. Thanks.
Great. Okay, I don't have anything. I was away for the last 2 weeks, so Vice Mayor Chow.
So that left me very busy. So I guess I just go for the regional assignment. I attended the joint meeting with COSD. I think John Willie was there also. And COSD wonders about the field maintenance and rental fee we charge. They think they can do the maintenance with much lower cost, and then they can benefit from the rental fee. So we need to continue that discussion. And I attended the ABAG General Assembly in Oakland. We voted to approve the work program and budget. However, I questioned that the consultant fee that they has a huge increase in their budget, and they couldn't explain it. And then I attended MTC ABAG Regional Advisory Group meeting. It's in San Francisco, but I attended live stream. They are discussing Plan Area 2050 with more aggressive projection on office, but then they are also considering potential office cap on cities with dramatic job housing imbalance. And there is also new methodology for RENA allocation. And then I attended the Cities Association Legislative Committee meeting on behalf of Rod and the board meeting. They approved, they took some positions on state bills.
Yeah. Great, okay, Rod.
Yeah, and I appreciate you doing that. I've been out of the country last several weeks. The one piece of business that we worked on last time, Mayor, that I know you've been out of town too, and I'm hoping we can get out the next day or so. Pending your review is the letter to the VTA board and the 85 PAB on what we'd like to see. I think if we can get that out in the next day or so, what that'll give us an opportunity to do is try to build some working consensus around it with cities like Mountain View that are also passionate and interested. So hopefully we can get that review done. I think staff did a good job. I made some editing suggestions. So
sure,
that's my only one request. The meeting is on July 2nd, and we need a little time before that to get it together.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure we can get our transit up to the level of Berlin and Vienna in the next 5 years.
Yeah, I was mentioning, for example, in any of these larger cities, right, Frankfurt, in the outer suburbs, this is Sunday at 7 p.m., and on a Sunday night, headways of every 5 minutes in the outer suburbs. At 9:40 p.m. when we came back from dinner, headways of every 10 minutes. So that's, right, time between the trains. And that's why even if people have cars, they give them up. And gosh, it sure be great if we had a alternative like that here for people struggling through stop-and-go commutes.
Yeah, I also rented bikes at every occasion. There's protected bike lanes everywhere, shared with pedestrians, and kind of scary until you get used to paying
did I
close
hear
attention.
yes, we can get that letter out in the next?
Sure, yes.
Okay, thank you
sorry.
very much. Appreciate
Go
that.
ahead.
Okay.
So
That's
the
all I have.
Cities Association also had a presentation about the REACH code. So yeah, they are saying that we need to act quickly by the end of the year. And there was also presentation by San Jose about their new scooter ordinance, how their revenue. So if we want more information, we can talk to them.
Yeah, it's something we're going to have to come up with.
Okay, so we're on to consent. I have 2 requests from the public to pull item 9 and item 12. Are there any requests from council members to pull any items?
I'll move items 6 through 16, accepting 9 and 12.
Second?
Okay, vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so item 9 is the Housing Commission Work Program. So do we have a representative to talk about that? And I guess we can have the citizens come up and speak about their concerns. Jennifer Griffin?
Good evening, City Council and staff. Thank you all for being here. I did attend the Housing Commission meeting, and I believe this item did go to the Planning Commission recently. It looks like there's a lot of good things that the Housing Commission is going to be working on in their year-long plan. I just wanted to talk about one of them, which was incentives to build ADUs. I have had a lot of concerns about the ADUs. Some of it was promoted by the onslaught of ADU bills in our state, let alone the 200 million housing bills that are coming down. And I began to wonder whether this was going on in Oregon and Washington State. And lo and behold, there's a bill very similar to SB 50 that is loitering its way through Portland, and it would do the same thing for Oregon that SB 50 is trying to do for California. And in Washington State, there is HB 1797 and SB 5812, which are 2 ADU bills for the whole state of Washington, surprise, surprise. And they would have every R1 residence in Washington State could have a duplex or a triplex put on it if these bills were passed. It would eliminate off-street parking. It would eliminate owner occupancy of main house. It would eliminate minimum lot size. These bills were shut down and they were introduced in February of 2019, and they were halted and stopped on April 18th, 2019 in Washington State. And may I commend the state of Washington. Washington is not California, but then again, these bills are very similar to AD 68 and 69 and the Laura Friedberg one where you can sell your ADU to God knows who. And I really don't think it's appropriate that because of the issues with the ADU and because of the massive amounts of housing bills that are coming down, which we are doing our best to try to understand and challenge, and as I have said before, the housing bills and the ADU bills has given me cause to ponder democracy in my own home state of Sacramento, of what is going on. I'm beginning to ponder what's happening in Oregon, where my brother's home in Portland, my niece's future home, could wind up being a duplex, and what would happen to Washington State. I don't think that we should be trying to actively promote the ADUs. Yes, let's find out about them, but I don't think it's appropriate that the Housing Commission should be studying how to make them come in faster when the public still has great questions about them. My compliments to the staff. You all have spent dedicated hours trying to understand what we want, and this is not what I want for the Housing Commission. But thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Okay. Okay. What?
Do you want to hear from Carrie on that?
Okay, yeah, Carrie, do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Before you, you have the Housing Commission Fiscal Year 1920 Work Program, which includes 6 items from the city's work program, 2 additional work program items suggested by the Housing Commission. The first is identifying a list of city-owned parcels to be considered for affordable housing. The second, which is invite community groups to present on affordable housing topics, which we did at the last Housing Commission meeting. We had 2 of our grantees present. And then we also have the addition from a council member of the last item on the attachment, which I believe was a desk item this evening, to monitor, participate, and report on ABAG regional meetings. And so the commissioners will attend and report back on regional housing issues. And I'm available for any questions.
Okay. Anyone from the council have questions?
So I requested that item that, as I understand, the staff is already following the ABAG meeting because ABAG is working on Plan Bay Area 2050, and they are forming a different kind of growth model, and they are modeling a faster growth even than the 2014 model. And so besides ABAG, also HCD has a series of meetings on Regna allocation. They don't have to attend the meeting because these are all video recorded and just, I guess, follow along. I'm hoping both Housing Commission and Planning Commission should follow. You can watch live stream or recorded video. And they have presentation. So I actually prepared a summary of the meeting that I watched, and there is a timeline that I hope that we can keep an eye on because there is a deadline to support some letters of intent in June. I'm not exactly, deadline is September. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but of interest is PDA. They are separating PDA into transit rich and something called connected community, which is any bus route that's 30 seconds in peak time. So these are things I would like Housing Commission and Planning Commission to keep an eye on. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'll just mention, I read the Mercury News. I read that in San Jose they've introduced a proposal. I don't know that the council's voted on it there, but to look at specific proposals that would streamline ADU production for below market rate housing. Are you familiar with that proposal? No. Yeah. So I would be interested in under item 5 here, looking at having the Housing Commission look at what San Jose is proposing to do. We've talked about this at the Cities Association over the last year. How could you house more teachers in your city? So if we're serious about building housing, it seems like one win-win potentially for property owners as well as those who might want to live here where they're teaching, for example, or want to work for the city or whatever, might be to build units that we would consider moderate income, below market rate units. The homeowner is, some fees may be waived by the city in consideration for retaining that unit in our housing stock for some period of years after it's constructed. For moderate income. This missing middle housing, I think, is so critical to retaining the kind of folks that we'd like to have embedded in the community, and then also represents a win for homeowners who would like to make some improvement on their property and make some space for somebody like a teacher. So
yeah,
I'd appreciate that.
Actually, I had a meeting with Silicon Valley Housing Trust. They provide loans for low-income housing, and they are working on a program that will provide loans for people to build ADUs specifically for moderate income.
Yeah, that may be the way.
And yeah.
Right. I hope we're not giving incentives for ADUs that are used solely for short-term rentals, but for moderate and low-income rentals, I mean, I think that's a good idea. And I'm sure the Housing Commission has considered all that.
I can add too that the Housing Trust Silicon Valley is on our presenter group to bring their programs to the Housing Commission. And as of right now, it looks like they're coming in August. So we'll all
I'm
get an
thinking
overview.
Liang has it right, that it had to do with loans and things that were made available. But some, looking at some incentives that could be offered in order to increase our housing stock for those folks we'd like to have. So, thank you.
Okay. Let's see, the other.
Did you want to vote?
Oh, yeah,
on
we
this?
need to vote on that, sorry, okay. So can I have a motion for item 9 to approve the work program?
I move item 9.
With the changes. That
Right,
we've-
with the changes.
Liang
we
has
talked
offered, and I suggest,
Right,
thank you.
with the table changes.
Thank you.
With the desk changes.
Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, vote.
Motion carries unanimously.
So I made a copy of these notes. I'll just give to all the council
Okay.
members.
So the next item pulled from consent is item 12, regarding the antenna ground lease. Can we have a staff report?
Sorry, council members, Chad Mosley, city engineer. This existing ground lease is for an existing antenna that's located at the service center. We're extending this lease because the last one expired. It actually expired some time ago. The lease is substantially similar to the previous lease agreement with some modifications to the rental rates. We've increased the rental rate substantially, and we have a yearly multiplier that increases that lease rate. I think there was a member of the public that had some questions about it, and I'd be happy to answer any questions they have.
Great, so this is Jennifer Jackson Parker. Welcome.
Good evening, Jennifer Jackson with Parker Legal Group. I'm actually here on behalf of the lessee entity. I wasn't intending for it to be pulled from consent. So I apologize.
Oh, okay, you didn't want to pull this?
Yeah, I
Okay.
put a note on there that I was just available for questions.
Oh, okay, right, yeah, I see that in small print there. Okay,
Okay.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll move item 9.
Item
I'm
12.
sorry, 12. So sorry.
Okay, second.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, what time are we? Okay, we're on to, are there any second readings of ordinances?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we're on to public hearings. Public hearing to consider and approve the capital improvement plan.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
May I interrupt that this is where you want to possibly reorder the agenda to?
Oh,
speak
right,
on
sorry, okay.
20 and,
So we're proposing to move item 21 and 22 before item 17, since 17 is going to be very lengthy.
Would you like a motion?
Yes, please.
So moved.
Okay, I'll second it. Vote.
oh, sorry. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so we are on to item 18, right? Wait, no, we only,
I think we're going to 20 now, right?
all right, okay, that's right, move them ahead, but then, okay, right, 21 and 22. Okay, item 21, implementation of an 18-month pilot program for on-demand community shuttle with VIA. We can have a staff report.
Give us one moment here. All right. Good evening, Mayor, members of council. Roger Lee, your acting director of Public Works. Before I get started, we have several. Public Works has a few items tonight, and I want to recognize. I know this is out of term, but this will be Tim Borden's last public meeting here with the council, and I just wanted to recognize, with Tim, the pleasure I've had in working with Tim over the last 8.5 years, and what I've learned from Tim, and being able to take ideas and come out with even better ideas when I left his office. So I just want to recognize that with Tim before I get started with this. He's been a great person to work with and a friend of mine. So with that, I'll introduce the Community Shuttle Pilot Program. This project was...
Can you talk into the microphone more?
Yes, I'll do that. So this was brought to council on April 30th. Survey results earlier in April, then again on April 30th. And council had asked that this be considered, with the budget this year. And Chris will be giving the presentation, and if you do ultimately choose an alternate, this being recommended, or the other alternate, do know that we will then proceed in the selection process and be bringing the vendor via an agreement for you to authorize. And concurrent with that will be a very robust strategy as to how we will implement the outreach for the community shuttle program so that we really hit the ground running. And so with that, I'll introduce Chris here.
Good evening, council members. Good evening, council members. All right. So Roger covered this, but at the April 16th council meeting, we gave a presentation on an online survey that we conducted last summer. And we also gave an overview of an on-demand shuttle proposal that was well received by council and directed staff to include it in discussions for the April 30th budget meeting. And then at that meeting, we did have a discussion about an 18-month pilot program. And council had some concern about the overall cost of the program, especially in light of other budget priorities. So what we did is we went back and engaged the vendor and thought up ways to bring back a more streamlined, lower cost proposal. And so that's what I'll be presenting this evening. So what we have here are three alternatives, really two that involve moving forward with the pilot at this time. So alternative A, the way that we arrived at these reductions in cost are by raising the fare and reducing the amount of discounts that would be offered. So in alternative A, we would have 10 VIA vans with a $5 fare. The projected cost at our target utilization rate, the estimated cost would be $1.16 million. The estimated cost, the number shown in orange, is $1.75 million. And what that orange number is funds that would be set aside to give the city staff the ability to reduce those fares if the $5 higher fare is a deterrent to ridership. That would allow us to gradually reduce that fare until you hit the sweet spot where the ridership is high. In the second alternative, alternative B, that's an even leaner approach. It would have 8 vans with a $6 fare, so a slightly higher fare, which would have an estimated cost to the city of $882,000. And again, that's for the whole 18-month pilot. And again, in this proposal, we are asking for $1.5 million as a total envelope so that we can adjust those fares if necessary. With that, the orange numbers, any of these numbers can be mixed and matched. If council were to want, let's say, 10 vans, for example, and set aside less reserve to tinker with fares, that's certainly an option. In alternative C, that option would have staff pursue grant funds and return to council when there's further information about a grant and not move forward with the shuttle at this time. So there is, speaking of grants, there's a grant available through the Bay Area Air Quality Management District. It's called the Pilot Trip Reduction Program. That is a grant that is likely to open in the next month. Unfortunately, the city is not an eligible applicant. However, VTA is initially offering their support to apply on our behalf. That would involve some type of agreement between the city and VTA that would allow VTA to act as a pass-through. That is a reimbursement grant, so there would still be a need for allocated funds. The city would need to pay VIA and then on a monthly basis be reimbursed through the BAAQMD via VTA. So it would take a little bit of coordination, but that's our goal. And then at the end of this 18-month pilot, assuming council moves forward this evening with alternative A or B, we would assess the different funding sources throughout the pilot, whether through AQMD or otherwise, gauge interest in surrounding communities. We have heard after the April 16th meeting, there was an article in the San Jose Mercury News, and many communities since have reached out to us and expressed interest in perhaps at some point working together on a program. So I just wanted to make that note. Also, I wanted to mention the question was brought up about whether Lyft or Uber could be an alternative to doing a shuttle. And we're not recommending that at this time. The Mountain View TMA has a pilot program called the Midday Trip Reduction Program. And what it essentially is a coupon code. And they haven't been able to provide data to the TMA above the number of trips taken and the amount of dollars used. There is no guarantee that those are shared rides, so we don't feel like that would be an appropriate use of public funds for this purpose. And lastly, we're asking for a sole source justification, a nod from council, because at this time VIA is the only vendor that provides a turnkey transit service, meaning that they're the only vendor that provides the transit vehicles, staffing, management, the algorithm on the back end, et cetera. Now that Chariot is out of business, VIA is the last company standing, or only company standing. And then at the end of the pilot, since this is the pilot program, at the end of the 18-month pilot, we would assess whether there are any new vendors that have come into existence during that time. And if there are, we would issue an RFP at that time.
Right, if we decide to continue with it, if it's used.
Correct. And then the, as Roger noted, if council decides to move forward with the pilot program, the next step would be to engage VIA in contract negotiations, and we would bring back a negotiated contract to council for consideration. At that time, we would also have a robust PR program to engage the community with more details, so we can ensure a good ridership. I wanted to end on the note that we have two representatives from VIA, one that flew from Austin, one that came from Berkeley. Ironically, it took the same amount of time, and they're both here this evening. Lainey Shorp is with the partnerships team, and Megan Richer are both here on this evening if you have any specific questions or would like to hear from VIA. And also just the latest update, the West Sacramento system is now at a utilization rate of 4.16. That means there's that many passengers in a VIA van during an hour, and they've generated 65,000 trips in a year's time. And our projection for an 18-month pilot is 168,480 trips. So now available for any questions you may have.
So how much per trip are we subsidizing?
The trip subsidy would range based on the utilization rate. So it would depend whether or not that utilization is 3, 3.5, 4, and it scales up.
Right, so choose one. Choose 4 and $6 then.
Let me see. I'll need a moment to pull that up.
Okay. And I know we're currently subsidizing single occupancy rides with the rides program.
Correct.
So do you see that any of those rides passengers would move over to the on-demand shuttle? Because, the rides is very expensive.
I do. I think that Cupertino's contributed about $25,000 towards the ride program. I could see that, and VTA has already stopped participating in that
Right.
program. I think it would be unlikely that Cupertino residents would want to continue participating in ride because it has such a long order ahead time. I think it's 72 hours, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
So the level of service would be drastically different. I can't imagine that people would be interested in continuing to use it if we had a via alternative.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'll be happy.
All right, go.
So Chris and I have been corresponding. After we discussed this previously, the Air District that has funded many of these things took action to approve a whole bunch of money. We have at the Air District, about $140 million to improve air quality through mobile projects. That is, things that specifically we can't regulate, but we do offer incentives. We offer money to put in EV chargers, and we offer money for these kinds of programs. So we actually, on May 23rd, approved 7 different projects like this, many of them on-demand programs, with an average grant of $603,000. So I would love to see us go ahead with this as you're proposing, but one way or the other, see how the program is working and either consider increasing the allocation because of grant funding and popularity, or if we're not getting enough uptake in the program, consider dropping that $5 fare $1 or something based on the grant funding we're getting. But the one question I have for you, Chris, is would our starting this program without that funding be then less likely to have the grant, be less likely to let us have that, acquire that grant funding, or does it not really matter, do you think?
So I think that having proof of concept with numbers and utilization would be helpful to prove greenhouse gas.
Because we're basically saying we're committed now.
Yes.
Please help us. So those projects, just so people know, Presidio Go, Downtown Shuttle, Caltrain Shuttle, ACE Shuttle, which is a VTA program, San Jose State Ride Sharing and Trip Reduction, Union City Transit, Monotransit, Go Tri-Valley On Demand, Shared Ride Shuttle, and then first and last mile services to Walnut Creek BARC. So all these things the Air District has funded, and based on my conversation with Air District staff, I think we'd have a good shot at doing it. But I'd like to see us give this a try. It's not a replacement for what we're ultimately going to be, what we'll ultimately need, which is transit on our major corridors between our cities. But I think demonstrating that we are serious about this and we can make some headway in moving folks around. I mean, we know that there are seniors and others who really who lack mobility, and given the poor service we get from VTA, I think we just have to start something somewhere, and so I'm in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So just I'm sorry, a follow-up question on Councilmember Singh's comments. So I noticed that the deadline for the Air Quality Management District grants was March 15th. And it seems like they're rewarding these grants a couple months later. What's the upcoming cycle looking like? Is that going to be another year, or?
We were told that they were going to reopen very soon.
Okay.
And then they're, I think, awarding them on a rolling basis, so.
Yeah, we were told that it would be open for applications within the next month.
Oh, great. Great.
So also the list of shuttles that you mentioned, Rod mentioned, that's funded. It seems they are all connecting to some existing transit and BART. Is that a requirement of getting that funding? Because we don't have existing transit here to connect to, except occasional trip to Caltrain. So most of our trips probably do not qualify if that's a requirement.
We are within the mapped area. So I clarified that with AQMD, and we are within the designated area, and we would be connecting and offering service to Caltrain, which is all that would be necessary to qualify.
So we would qualify for that grant. Okay. And I remember I did a calculation last time. It was about $12 per trip. That we would be subsidizing. I mean, not subsidizing. $12 per trip is a cost per trip. If we charge $5 per trip, we are subsidizing $7 per trip. Is that about right?
Looking up that, there was an email that I had sent previously that had a breakdown of that chart that unfortunately I can't find at this moment, but it was on a scale between, I believe, I want to say $6 or around there. Lainey or Megan, do either of you know if the approximate cost per trip? Could you come up
Can
to
you
that
come up to the
mic?
microphone and speak?
Hi, I'm Megan Richer.
Hi, I'm Lainey Short.
So it's a range from basically an $8 implied cost per ride to a $13 cost per ride, depending on utilization, as Chris mentioned before. But if we're thinking about a utilization of 4, the implied cost per ride is $10. So as you noted, if the ride costs, say, $5, then the subsidy would be $5.
So the cost we are looking at the 1.75 million, for example, or 1.5 million. It's how the cost to the city after fare recovery, right? So the cost, I mean, the actual cost would be how much? How much do we expect to recover through the fare?
What was the 1.75 million? I'm sorry, I'm lost.
You said the $6 per trip, 8 vans. That as the requested amount would be $1.5 million.
Yes.
So that's after the fare recovery with $6 per trip.
So the amount that we're estimating the cost to be is the $882,000 to run that service. The orange figure, the 1.5, factors in additional costs that we would not intend on expending unless the ridership was low and we needed to adjust the fares.
How about coordination? I think we will, senior citizens need to call in to request because they can use the smartphone. Would all this be covered?
Yes, that's all part of the service.
So the actual cost is about $1 million with fare recovery.
So what was that?
So, I mean, the actual cost would be about $1 million, right?
The cost to the city? Yes, if you look at attachment A, there are 2 pages to that. And if you look at the reverse side, it's cost net of fare box. That gives you the projected cost to city for both alternatives. So the staff recommendation for 10 vehicles at 3.5, the cost to city is 1.160. And for 8 vehicles, which is alternative B, it's highlighted at a $6 fare. That's $882,000 is the cost to city. The unknown is the extra funds that we're asking for, so that we can ensure that these vans are filled with passengers.
And if we get grant, is that 1-year grant? That's not ongoing, right? It's just
it's a 1-year grant, correct?
So that means if the pilot were successful and we would like to continue the program, we are looking at an operating cost for the city of $1 million a year.
Potentially, if no other sources of funding.
But potentially you might not have a continuing grant every year, right?
Correct.
And then won't be self-sustaining because we wouldn't likely charge it fully for our residents. So then we will be looking at, for example, in 30 years, that's $30 million. Sort of like what I'm looking at is we have a lot of capital project that we find it's very hard to find money, like City Hall. $70 million sounds a lot, but if you spend $2 million per year, you can fund that in 35 years. But then here we are looking at, okay, 1 million per year. It doesn't look like that much for 1 year, but if we do want to have that, which I think seems, but we would be looking at, this is a $30 million project for 30 years, kind of like that.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think
piloting, that means, are we okay with going with that?
Yeah, and that's the key. It is a pilot, and we would be looking at what our actual numbers come in at, and then we would have a decision to make at the end of that pilot whether or not it made sense.
But I mean, even if it makes sense, even the utilization is good, we will still be looking at $1 million per year.
Potentially,
Right.
but one point I do want to make is part of the point of having a pilot and having a proof of concept is that there are many other funding sources that could be available. Caltrain is a very high interest in having high ridership, and they're going through a business plan update and with the electrification of Caltrain that will result in trains coming every 20 minutes. And right now, the highest amount of growth in the county is in the Gilroy-Morgan Hill portion of Santa Clara County. So there is funding being discussed. There are funding measures being discussed that are not yet fleshed out. And so we think that having a pilot that demonstrates a strong demand will put us in a position to qualify for other grant funds. So it's really hard to say this far out, 18 months out, whether or not, what funding sources would be available at that time. There are many options.
And I asked about Uber or Lyft because their investors are at least now subsidizing their rides because they want that program to be successful. And the usual Uber pool ride I take is about $5. I can go to other destinations beyond Cupertino. I can go to San Jose, Santa Clara, Sunnyvale. It's not limited to Cupertino, but with this program, I can only go to Cupertino locations. So that's why I proposed, I think through email, that if there is a model we can use Uber, Lyft, or other type of rideshare, we provide a coupon code for any trip beginning or ending in Cupertino that's more flexible, more people would use it, and we don't have a fixed upfront cost. Our cost is how much voucher we are willing to provide. We can say subsidize $2 per trip, so it's $3 per trip for the users. Then that might be more attractive. I understand that you say the Mountain View model didn't work because Uber was not willing to limit the voucher issued by Mountain View to only pool share the ride. So I wonder, have we spoken to Uber? Are they, because it should be easy in the computer program to distinguish this coupon only applies to Uber pool.
Yeah, they do offer that with the coupon code. What they don't offer, and they're secretive about, is their data. They will only allow you to see that the coupon has been used. They won't show trip origin or destination data. And so there's no guarantee that that trip was shared. The difference with Via is that their model was based on rideshare, a pool concept. So the city would have a dashboard that at the real time would tell us how many trips were shared rides versus not knowing, and you could be subsidizing taxi trips that have one vehicle, one occupant in them, which doesn't replace a trip.
But you said
no better than someone driving.
Uber is able to limit the coupon to only apply to Uber pool.
Yes, but
then that means the Uber Pro will have the potential to be shared by someone else. The only time when it's not shared is because no one else happens to be around.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
So you are saying it won't be shared. That's not true. The only downside for using Uber or Lyft is, at this point, they are unwilling to share the data.
It may be shared. It may be shared. I wouldn't characterize it that that's the only difference, because VIA does more in-depth background checks of their drivers, which allows us to allow children ages 14 and older with parental consent to use the program. There's a number of other distinguishing characteristics between VIA that perhaps Lainey and Megan could speak to, but it's a completely different model. And currently, Uber and Lyft do not offer a comparable service. It's also, Uber and Lyft rely on personal vehicles, and there are another of other considerations as well.
That's why it's cheaper, though. So the city will be paying for all this. That's
So I
why
pulled up a Lyft ride to the Sunnyvale Caltrain station just for comparison purposes. Right now, on a shared Lyft ride, it would be $10.14. So this would bring Caltrain service to Cupertino residents for half that cost.
But anyway, our subsidy for the Caltrain ride is in fact higher. It's actually more than $12. We are just subsidizing it. Right? You can't say that.
No, the city's not subsidizing the Caltrain ride.
It takes longer, so in some sense, it's taking okay. So as I understand, Cupertino is your first client in the area, right?
Actually, we have a number of projects in California, so the closest here would be Marin. We also work in West Sacramento. I know this is far for you, in the context of what we work with LA Metro, OCTA. I think those are all of our, and Samtrans, excuse me. So those are all of our California projects. And I think just to touch on what Chris was saying is, we are very committed with working with the public sector, with working with cities and transit agencies, and that manifests itself in many ways. That might be data sharing, additional safety and background checks. Working with you to share the data and allowing you to own the data means that you can have those insights to plan for the future. So when you think about 5, 10, 30 years ahead, you will have the insights around utilization and performance and efficiency and vehicles to actually create a system that works well for your city, whereas more of a short-term program of just saying we will spend a few dollars towards getting someone from A to B doesn't necessarily confront issues around congestion or larger transit planning that you may want to enable in the region or grants that you may apply for. So I think that something that is for VIA, it's not sort of a tangential thing. It's really central to what we're doing. We're in over 60 cities globally, and only 6 of those are direct-to-consumer operations. So New York, DC, Chicago, Amsterdam, London, another small city in the UK. You would use us similar to the way that you might talk about using an Uber Pool or Lyft line, but all those other cities globally is we're partnering directly with the public sector, and we have a real commitment to making sure that those partnerships work for our public sector partners. And that manifests itself in everything that we do and everything that we strive to do.
So what I'm trying to get is, if Cupertino used VIA and this pilot is successful, even before it's successful, maybe many other cities will jump on it. So would you be willing to give us more of a discount so that we can lead a pack of cities and VIA can expand in Silicon Valley?
So I think that, I haven't been as involved in the business development conversations as Lainey has, but I believe that we've been as aggressive as we can on pricing. It's very important for us to partner with you guys, and so well before we stand here before you, we've pushed as hard as we can to come up with a model that we think that will work for you and we'll be able to build a sustained partnership. We want to grow with you, but we also need to make sure that in the process we don't put ourselves out of business. So we're trying to strike a balance, and it's very important to us. But I'm pretty certain that we've been as aggressive as we can. If there's specific elements that you're concerned about, whether that's fare box risk or something like, there are elements of the proposal that we can dig into. But we've been very aggressive under Chris's guidance because we know that budget is a major concern.
Yeah,
Anything
I'm
else?
okay.
Okay, John?
So my questions are kind of trying to put this into somewhat simple terms. So we're saying if we were to go with the alternative B, 6 vans, 6 trips per day.
10 vans.
I'm sorry, 6 vans, $6 per trip.
Alternative
No,
B is 8 vans.
Alternative B is 8
Oh, it's
vans.
8 vehicles, okay.
Yeah, I'm going on the low side. You know, so 8 vans, $6 per trip. If we assume 4.1 people per van, we would wind up out of pocket $882,000 per year. But my first question is then, what do we consider success? So I'm missing some numbers here. With the 8 vans, how many people per year are being moved in your vans?
So I can respond to that if you
Okay.
like. Sure.
How
So
many
in that
people-
scenario, in alternative B,
Yep.
that number also is based on a 3.5 average utilization rate. That's
3.5.
which is also our metric for success in this pilot.
Okay.
Given that Cupertino is a very suburban area and is a transit desert, you might expect a much higher utilization in New York City or some dense urban walkable area. Getting back to your question, so the sorry, could you repeat the utilization rate you were asking regarding the
How many people
how
per
many people you
year
move? That's right.
are being moved by this?
About 30 passengers per hour are moved per van. So approximately per year, that comes out to 112,320 trips that occur.
And if we're saying 3.5 people per van, so then we're essentially saying about 400,000 people per year?
No, the annual is 112,320 people moved. That's correct. The whole
People move, so when you say trips per year, you're saying people,
correct trips taken off the street.
not van
Correct.
trips.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the difference between should point out between alternative A and B, the ridership difference is not considerably different. What's different is the time that you will wait for your van to arrive, which could impact ridership. If you go on with if people have to wait too long, they may say, forget via, this is too slow. So.
Well, let me kind of finish. So I'm trying to get my arms around what this picture really looks like. So if we have 3.5 people per van, 112,000 people, so then we're saying we've got essentially 30,000 van trips per year. 30,000, I mean, we got 3.5 people in every van.
No, I'm sorry. That's an hourly rate. 3.5 is number of people using, is that right?
Correct.
Okay, that's an hourly rate. 3.5 per hour per van.
Yeah, you have to look at the total transit hours that it's up and running.
So the final number that I'm trying to get to is how many car trips per year are we removing from our streets? So, for this $882,000, how many car trips are we removing from our streets? Now, if we have 3.5 people in a van at any one time, and the van is one vehicle, and so we had 3 people, we don't talk about the driver. So essentially, every time the van runs around, we're removing 2 vehicles off the road. And then how many vehicles per year are we, vehicle trips per year, are we removing? So that's the number that would really tell me, geez, does it equate to $882,000 of taxpayer money, this number of vehicles off of our roads? One vehicle is moving 3 people, but we keep 1 vehicle because it's the van. You know, that to me is, you know, what tells me it's going to be success or not. Just kind of saying that we're doing all these trips without that target, to me, that's what success is. The cost, the final benefit.
Yep.
So
It's really tough to say, and the reason I'll say that is because this program is also extremely popular with seniors, seniors that many of whom are housebound and have mobility issues, and anecdotally in the West Sacramento system and in other VIA systems, more seniors have been taking trips that previously were not able to get around the city. So looking at the numbers,
I would still give credit if, let's say that, you know, from what you're kind of describing, the senior wouldn't have gone to the library had he not had a ride, but now he is going to the thing. I would say, great, I'll give credit for the fact that that would have been a vehicle trip that now was not on our street. So I'll say you get credit for all the seniors, all the school kids that would otherwise done something else. So how many vehicle trips per year would we essentially say were not on our roads for the $882,000? To me, that's where, you know, if I'm out talking to residents and asking them, do you support a shuttle? If I ask them just the general question, they'll say, yeah, sounds great. And then I say, well, it's going to cost $882,000 per year. They're going to stop. Now I need to tell them how many trips per year is that $882,000 pulling off of our roads. And that's the number I think I need to decide or justify, convince residents.
So the reason that that's really hard to project and might be impossible to project is that having a connection to Caltrain, I cannot state that enough, how critical that is. We can't project the change in people's travel patterns coming from the surrounding areas outside of Cupertino that could now be connected by mass transit to Cupertino. So we could look at and give you a number and say, oh, well, it's 1 less trip per 3.5 per hour and come up with the whole algorithm. But what's more important is that it will change people's travel patterns that commute to Cupertino. And so that's really the benefit of this program. It's providing transit access to Cupertino in an alternative that does not currently exist.
So I hear that, but being numbers driven, metrics driven, you can't tell people, well, people's patterns changed and so it's a success. You got to have a metric in terms of this essentially was responsible for 300,000 vehicle trips that were not on our streets during that year, and then people can say 300,000 trips, $882,000. Gee whiz, sounds like a good thing. If it's
well, that's why we're doing the pilot, right? Sorry to interrupt you.
No, but
I don't think we can know the data until we do a pilot.
But I think to understand what the target metric is, put those assumptions in and say, okay, with these assumptions, this would be the vehicle trips per year. Now we need to go and prove that either it was that, less, or more. Without that, what is the target? What is going to allow you to say this was in fact successful for the $882,000, and you can't at the end of the project say it changed people's patterns?
So I don't understand what you are looking for. So I think Chris said a year we are expecting 112,000 trips, right? That's
for 8.
That's the target.
For 8 vans.
For 8 vans.
Running 10 hours a day.
Yeah, 10 hours a day. Yeah. What's the wait time, by the way, for option A and B?
For option A, approximately 15 to 16 minutes. there's a slightly longer wait during peak time, and then option B would be more around 17, 18 minutes in that window with a slightly longer wait time during peak.
So during peak is how long?
During the rush hour.
How much longer do you expect?
Approximately 5 minutes or so. It's really hard to project the demand, which is why we're recommending 10. We think that the demand will exceed our expectations. And it's harder for VIA to add vans. There's a lag time because they have to order them. It takes a few months to scale up.
So if it's 112,000 per trip, that's about 851 trips per day. That's kind of in average, your target to make sense with this model, right? So can we say if we have more than 850 trips per day or more?
So again, that with those assumptions, if everything was, right on those particular numbers, would you consider $882,000 a year is justified for the 112,320 people trips per year?
So I have a question. Can people pre-order a trip, pre-schedule a trip?
Pre-scheduling is not a feature that we're doing as part of this deployment. Basically, when you introduce pre-scheduling, it reduces your available supply. So if you had 10 vans and 2 or 3 of them are pre-scheduled, then you've essentially got 7 or 8 vans that are available for on-demand pickups, and so it increases the wait time pretty drastically for on-demand. So in a smaller deployment, we essentially recommend that there not be pre-booking because it can pretty significantly diminish the quality of service for people who are using on-demand.
But for school hours, wouldn't that be more effective use of the van?
No, we find in general that it's a much less efficient use of an on-demand vehicle to be pre-scheduled because it essentially kind of blocks it from use in the general ecosystem where there's a lot of demand.
But we are looking at a 15 to 20 minutes wait time. I think Uber Pool is about 5 minutes.
So a lot of that is based on essentially the amount of vehicles and the size of the coverage zone. And I think that there's been a pretty strong case made for the use cases within Cupertino and connecting to Caltrain at the stations that are sort of most relevant for your population. And so that's kind of where the balance is always between essentially the size of the zone, the number of vehicles that you have budget for, and then the quality of service or the wait time. So this is a sort of a balance that we think will still drive a lot of ridership and be a valuable use case. But of course, if you do more vehicles or a smaller zone, then you get shorter wait times.
So what's the percentage of trips that you're estimating that goes to Caltrain in your model?
So we don't have a projection, but we have the survey that we conducted last summer that showed a very high percentage of survey takers that would like to be able to access Caltrain. It was, I believe, 83%.
But your model shouldn't be based on a certain percentage of trips actually take that long distance to Caltrain and
It
back.
did take that into consideration.
Changes the time.
It did take that into consideration. And
So what's the percentage you are assuming in the model? Very high percent, 50%, 30%?
I don't have a fixed percentage, but the model does consider the Caltrain trips.
And just for context, so in a similar service, granted this service in Arlington, Texas is a bit larger in terms of the service zone, but there's a similar structure in terms of what they call a service island, which is about 3 miles north of the zone, that links to the Trinity Railway Express that takes people into the broader Dallas-Fort Worth area. Out of the 700 to 800 trips that we're doing a day in Arlington, about 40% of those are that connection to the rail line. So it really serves the purpose of kind of connecting and complementing the existing public transit system within the community.
So that's 700 to 800 trips per day there. So that's 700 to 800 people. That's not 700 to 800 vans, van trips. And so then you've got 700 to 800 people per day. Do you have a number of what's the average rider per, riders per van? Are they at 3.5? So you take the 700 to 800 divided by 3.5, and you say so we've got our vans making this many runs a day.
So we do track utilization so that rides, or what you're saying, people per vehicle per hour, trips per vehicle per hour, rides per vehicle hour, this utilization number we track in all of our deployments. And it is quite high in Arlington. I don't believe that we can just, I don't think that we can just share their utilization number for deployments, but that is, what we're tracking, to basically look at what is a successful deployment is those two numbers, total ridership and utilization, because we basically want to make sure that people are using the service and that every vehicle is used efficiently. And to sort of your interest, throughout the deployment, we can survey riders about what would their alternative have been had they not used VIA, to get at the insight that I think you're looking for, which is if they didn't use VIA, how would they have gotten from point A to point B, and is this actually taking a single occupancy vehicle off the road?
All right, thank you. Ron, did you have anything?
Yeah, I'd just like to observe that in my considerably long tenure here, we've always talked about providing transportation. We specifically worked hard with staff on finding a nexus when we impose development fees on new projects in the city. We worked hard to identify very specific projects that we could use to justify our transportation impact fee, which we've instituted now. I would think that this would be an example of something, if we could demonstrate a concrete program that's effective, for example, that this would be something that we could use to consider increasing that fee. Is that accurate, staff? The problem is if it's intangible, if we don't really know, it gets harder. If we've actually got a working pilot, a trial, this is something that we could actually use to justify fees that we charge for new development in the city.
I think we could look at that. The challenge may be that would really be an ongoing operating cost, and most of what you see in your development impact fees are capital costs, but would be happy to look at that.
I see, but so the alternative could be taxes or other things that we would impose on heads tax or these kinds of things, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Hold on.
That could be used to help fund this and help us meet our climate action plan as well.
So I had one question. The 2019 VTA plan is adding a bus from Cooper, extending the 523 to Sunnyvale Caltrain. I don't believe there's a bus direct from Cupertino to Caltrain at this time, though I could be wrong. Right.
I don't believe
so I just
there's
wonder
this
if that's going to impact the usage of the shuttle, as well as would some of these like retirement communities that provide their own shuttles now say, hey, this is a better deal for us, just have our residents call the VIA shuttle because it's going to cost us less than operating our own system.
That is a possibility, I suppose. Regarding the VTA connection to Sunnyvale, I think given VTA's ridership, that wouldn't be a huge concern right now.
Right, okay.
So
All right,
how long is the
finish
trip?
up, okay?
How long is the normal travel time from Cupertino to Caltrain during peak hour?
I believe to Sunnyvale, it depending on traffic, is about 14 minutes. Can be 20 minutes when traffic's really bad, and then to the Mountain View Caltrain station's a bit longer, about 5 to 7 minutes longer.
So most of the Caltrain trip probably will be during peak hour, or going one direction and then the other. That could be both. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I think if I can see a continuous stream of a revenue stream to funding the shuttle, I would feel more comfortable. Otherwise, this is more like a, say, $50 million project. But if it were a capital project, I at least see a building that would be there for 50 years. But this would be dollar that I won't see. But there is one idea. I think our hotel, well, our transient tax is 12%. If we increase that, the TOT, the hotel transit occupancy tax, if we increase that to 14% and use that as a continuous stream of funding for shuttle, I would feel more comfortable. Then there would be a continuous stream of revenue to fund this continuous operating cost.
Oh, and I believe I have only one comment card for this item from Jennifer Griffin. So if you'd like to speak now. Oh, there it is. Okay. And then Lisa Warren.
Good evening, City Council. Actually, I just wanted to give a shout out to Tim. Thank you very much for your service. You've been during the traumatic times in the last couple of years. I think the staff really need, all of the staff have really been through a lot as we have. So anyway, thank you very much. And yes, I have spent a lot of hours in the last I don't know, how long have I been coming here? 16, 17 years, hearing about a shuttle that might occur. And it looks like something is actually happening. And that is interesting about the Caltrain connection. We actually took Caltrain a couple of times up to the Giants game a couple of years ago, but we went out of Mountain View. I think once we went out of Sunnyvale, but we actually took the car there and parked. That was a very interesting experience, going to San Francisco. I was scared a lot of the time. Anyway, what I would say about this is, since I'm planning to be a very old senior in Cupertino, we're retiring in Cupertino, we're not going anywhere. And for a long time, I have noticed that you can't get from Stevens Creek Boulevard up to Blackberry Farm without a car. Unless you move the entrance of Blackberry Farm. I know in the beginning there was an entrance, you could actually drive from Stevens Creek Boulevard as it went down by Blue Pheasant. You could actually take a road up. There was an alternate entrance to Blackberry Farm. I would like to see some sort of a shuttle or a golf cart or something that went from Stevens Creek Boulevard actually up to Blackberry Farm. I personally could not walk the mile from Stockelmeyer to, I guess, Blackberry Farm. I can't do that. I can't ride a bike. I could ride a horse, but I think that we're looking at something here. We want to have access for people to be able to get to our parkland. Then again, we also have Rancho San Antonio Park, which is at the north end of Cupertino, I guess. And there is no access, again, from Foothill Boulevard up to Rancho San Antonio. And I think that we need to look at that, because you guys are talking about the last mile to Caltrain, et cetera, or to BART. I'm looking at the last mile to our parks, and I don't know how we do that. I mean, we went to Santa Barbara once years ago, and they had a little city shuttle that's free, and it goes all over the city, and it was really cool to ride on, and it was kind of a historical thing. But I would like to see some way to get up to Blackberry Farm and to get up to Rancho San Antonio Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Jennifer. Next, we have Lisa Warren, followed by Beth Nodal. Well, hope I pronounced that right.
This is really just a question, and I don't know if you can answer it on the spot. And maybe the answer is somewhere I could have accessed.
Go ahead, shoot.
Shoot. The question is, do you have to have proof that you're a Cupertino resident to board the shuttle? Or do you just have to be in a location that's in Cupertino where the shuttle is picking people up?
Okay. Staff.
You do not need You do not need proof to be a Cupertino resident, and the only place outside of Cupertino you could get the shuttle would be at one of the designated Caltrain stations.
Okay, but so then, someone coming from somewhere else could park a car on our city streets and access the shuttle to Caltrain, even though they're not a Cupertino resident, correct?
Correct.
And then their car sits in our street all day long.
That's correct, but
Okay.
having driven to Caltrain,
I just asked
I would
the
drive
question.
to Sunnyvale and park in an area that's not time restricted rather than drive to
I just asked you a question.
Cupertino.
I didn't know if it was in.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Kaiser also, right? We also serve Kaiser, right?
We do serve Kaiser.
Right, we would serve Kaiser,
Yeah.
but not El Camino?
We could add that. We could also
Okay.
add areas like that at a higher cost to try to bring the cost of the city down.
And you did know that Los Altos was interested in partnering with us as well.
Thank you.
Okay, now I have Beth. Welcome.
Hi, so yes, Beth Nadell, resident. Like I said, I don't drive, so I'm very interested in things like this. I do take Caltrain, and I would say I usually bike there, but occasionally I'll Uber there, and during rush hour times, it's way more expensive than $17 for sure. Also, I just wanted to say to Vice Mayor Chow, she was talking about Uber being an alternative. I think that the issue I have with that is you're actually putting more cars on the streets, and I think if you look at the idea of vans taking 4 people, if it's 100,000 rides, there's one van with 4 people, that's 75,000 rides you're saving. So I guess my only question would be is, can I put my bike on the van?
I was going to ask that too. Thank you for...
Yes, they would have bike racks.
And then what happens, how many, and what happens when you max out bikes?
I believe I would have to check with you. I believe
4?
it's 2 bikes, maybe 2 to 3 bicycles max. Because they're small vans, they're 7-passenger vans.
So, like, is it a rack on the front or back, or is it like on the van?
I believe it's on the back of the van.
Okay, thanks.
So could the VIA people answer that for the bike racks?
And also wheelchair. It also take a wheelchair, which Uber doesn't. So.
Hi, this is Lainey with Thea. Yes, so the bike racks, we are still kind of deciding exactly which ones, but we're thinking the 2, and they will be on the back, and they are accessible vehicles. I forget the exact count, but we typically recommend that 15 to 20% of the total fleet be accessible, and we can certainly increase that if that's of interest.
Great. So I think it's time to call for a vote on this. Did you talk yet?
No.
Okay, do
In
you have
the interest
anything?
of time, I'm just going
Okay.
bring a motion. So I motion that we, 1, authorize staff to pursue developing an 18-month pilot program under Alternative A for an on-demand shuttle not to exceed $1.75 million to be included in the fiscal 1920 operating budget. And 2, find that the use of formal competitive bidding procedures is not practical for the 18-month pilot program because VIA is the sole source provider of the community shuttle program at this time, and direct the city manager to dispense with city bidding requirements pursuant to Municipal Code 3.22.060. And finally, 3, direct the city attorney to enter into contract negotiations with VIA for subsequent council consideration.
I'll second that.
Oh.
Sorry, I have to add one more point.
The question's been called.
$1.5 million if divided by 20,000 household, that's $75 per year per household, and we currently have the storm drain fee for about $44. That hasn't passed. So if it doesn't pass, we would be covering the storm drain fee of $1.5 million
It's unrelated.
plus this.
It's unrelated. This is a pilot.
Still, this is a cost for everyone.
But going forward, we would have to identify a funding source. For the first 18 months, we will be funding it.
I was thinking TOT tax, but we were thinking TOT tax for City Hall also.
Right.
So
the question's been called. Please vote with your lights.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so we've been going for more than, what time is it now? Let's see. Yeah.
I'd like to acknowledge Chris, and I think you
he did a
really
great
have
job.
done a brilliant job looking at this. I think the on-demand model seems to be the way things are going, and I just I just want to acknowledge staff work here, and I really appreciate how you've queued this up, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
So let's take a 5-minute break. We've been going for 2 hours, 45 minutes. Hopefully the rest of these items will go faster. Thank you.